So this next chapter is in Rowan's perspective, and this is like the first moment where I'm like, I think I love Rowan. I think I might, maybe I love him. She doesn't need him. I'll take him. I don't know. Like, ugh.
Hey everybody, this is Kat.
And Rachel.
And you're listening to the Smut Peddlers podcast, a show for people who love books, especially when they're smut. We discuss our likes, our dislikes, and share our favorite moments with you.
Today we're talking about Heir of Fire Part 2 by Sarah J. Maas. So grab your favorite beverage and get ready to burn with us.
Okay, so trigger warnings as per usual. They're the same. It's a fantasy book. If this is your first time with us, and your first experience with a fantasy book, first of all, go back and read the other books that we have covered for this series, or you're gonna get a ton of spoilers, like all of the spoilers. So, there's blood and gore, trauma, nightmares, torture, murder, attempted murder. We do have, a like war scenario type scene, grief, loss, suicidal ideation. It's all kind of part of your typical, unfortunately, typical fantasy book. I also want to caveat, my cat ate through my cable to my really nice camera, which is really unfortunate. So today I am recording on a less than ideal camera setup, but here we are. And I apologize for all our visual listeners. I'm hoping that the camera store will have it fixed by the next time we record. So
the technical difficulties were abundant this time around.
Yes.
It would be really great to say that this hopefully will be the most amount of technical difficulties we'd have to deal with, but I feel like it's up in the air. It could get worse.
Oh yeah.
So now that we have finished the book, your official rating, please.
5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. See, I really enjoyed books 1 and 2. I think similar to Akhtar, people kind of like book 1 the least. I'm sure if you've been on the internet for any amount of time in the book realm, I would say 1 and 2 have a very similar, like, they like come up, or like they start out a little slow and then get a little better. And then obviously with this one, book 3, we are really in it. So 5 stars for sure.
That's great. It is. I also gave it 5 stars on my first read. I'm gonna give it 5 stars again on my second read. I think the fact that we split it into 2 parts definitely made me more aware of the fact that, like, this one is, if people have read Crescent City, it's similar to Crescent City in that it takes a little bit to get off the ground, like this book specifically, because there's whole new areas that you're exploring, there's a bunch of new characters, and they're very important, and that storyline is still very interesting to read, but like coming off of 2 books that were relatively action-packed and then coming into this one, which is like significantly thicker, you just have like almost the size of the first 2 books as the first half of this book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's longer to get into where like stuff starts really picking up and moving. But yeah, 5 stars. It's great.
It's a great book.
So just as a recap, at the end of the last part, one of my favorite lines from the 2 of them is that they decide to basically like heal together and can like actually decide to work together, and to like, she agrees to basically like continue discovering her power, but it's like her choice now. And I just, it sets them up for like, okay, great. A lot of the first part is her just being dragged along, like dragged out of her depression pretty forcefully by everyone around her. And then the end of the first part is really her deciding, okay, I'm going to actually take this and run with it myself. Like, I'm going to be an active participant in my life again.
Yeah, it's really that they agree to no longer be butting heads, which I think is great because the whole front half of the book is Rowan and Celaena like pretty much just at odds with each other partially. Like they take one step in a good direction and then like Rowan says some shit and they take like 6 steps back and you're like, "Come on, dude." At this point going into part 2, they're on like they maybe haven't agreed to be friends, but they've agreed to like go forward in a better manner than they have been previously.
Yeah.
So our part 2 is called Heir of Fire, which is our title of our book as well. The starting off portions of this section are like we are back in Otterlin. And we are with the rebels, we are with Kale, and they're still trying to figure out like what to do. They're still looking into word marks. They're still trying to decide. Kale's still trying to figure out like what side of the coin he's on. Adian and Ren are still kind of doing their thing in Rifthold.
They're basically just trying to find out more information right now at like the start of this second part.
Yeah.
They end up like going to a bar basically to like find people to talk to and like get more information. And one of the things that I liked about the scene where they go to this bar is like Kale makes a comment basically about how he can understand how Adian and Aelin can be so powerful because they're so empathetic and they have these like big presences that like when Adian goes and stands up and like starts talking to the people in the room and being like, because he basically tricks everyone and asks like, who's coming here from the farthest or who's been the furthest away, because they're like trying to find like where these trying to find people that have been where those like 3 like where those birds came from, the waves of birds that they talked about in the last part. And Kale's like watching him do it and everyone's just kind of like not so much fawning over him, but like they all stop and they all pay attention, they all listen. And
yeah,
I
he
like
remarks
that he
on
makes
him
this,
like being a good leader.
Yeah, being a good leader, and then they also just like people stop and listen when they talk. And he's like, it's so powerful, and he's like, I understand how this can become a problem for the king for sure.
Yes.
Like, yes, good.
Yeah, so Adian pretty much like holds up a beer and says, a contest. Who has gone the farthest? Like whoever's been the furthest, and people start shouting out like locations that they've been they've traveled to or been with work, and this one gentleman comes forward and said that he spent the last 5 years in Knoll, which
Ding, ding,
is
ding.
the furthest, and it is roughly the same spot that these birds were coming from on, I believe, the western side, if I'm remembering my map correctly. So we have Rifthold is one of our points that we learned in part 1, and part 2 we're trying to figure out what those other 2 points of origin are, pretty much.
Yeah, but they have like a rough directional idea, but they don't actually know for sure. Which is why they're out basically like trolling for information.
Yeah.
And that guy stands up and Adian's like, bingo, this guy, let me buy him a beer and we'll have a
Beers
chat.
on us for the rest of the night, all drinks on the house. And so, yeah, so they get this commander to sit down and talk with them. And of course, Adian, as he obviously led groups of people in the past. He's been on the front lines. He's gone to war. So like he knows what it's like to be put in the field. And so he really plays on that side of himself. And he pretty much, to get the guy talking, he says like nothing leaves this place. Like nothing is going to be told back to the king. And so this guy's has a little bit of a like, I don't know, he's a little peeved that after spending 5 years and doing so much, the king just like pulled him out of this location. He's like, yeah, me and my men like just had to leave and we're just told that another group was coming in. And like we weren't given any other information. And so
Yeah.
he's a little frustrated, rightfully so. He felt like he wasn't given enough credit for what he did for the last 5 years. He also talks about the locals not liking them after a while because of a tower that got put up. And the locals all called this tower wrong. Like they literally just, it's kind of a theme. Anything that has to do with the king, we've noticed that a lot of the quotes are something felt wrong, or it smelled wrong, or it looked wrong. Like they talk about that and how they cursed this tower being there. And so Adian and Kale now learn that this tower has no doors. It's the same obsidian, onyx, like stone that we've been encountering through kind of the series so far. We learn that men would go mad, but it would start with headaches. And there's a point where he even says it's written that we executed these men by like bow and arrow, but before we could even do that, they like bashed their heads on the ground and killed themselves pretty much because they were going so mad because they were in the vicinity of this tower. And of course, the commander doesn't know that it's the tower itself. He just knows that men were just going mad being here. It could be that they were isolated. Like it could just be that they were in, I think Knoll is the one that's kind of on the desert side in the...
I mean, the townspeople were basically saying it's cursed.
Yeah.
So, like, I think he probably bought into that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, they get, as they should, they get so much information from this man. The other bit that they add to is they're like, oh yeah, like, between us and the other tower we were communicating with all the time. It's like, Adian's like, let's talk more about this other tower.
Oh yeah, the other
Second
tower.
Where's that one exactly? So
yeah.
we get both towers, and then they've pretty much already assumed that the third tower is the clock tower that's in Rifthold.
Mm-hmm.
So with that information, they basically are like, oh, well, now we know where all three of the towers are.
Now we have our triangles. Our triangle. Yeah, and so Knoll, I just looked at the map as well. It is the deserted land, which is the red desert. So it was hard enough for them to get resources because they were in the desert. So the fact that like the townspeople were like wanted nothing to do with them on top of it, it was really difficult for them to like not go insane anyway in the scenario that they were in. I did really like that in this first little section we get a little bit more about Ren. So Adian and Ren kind of have a little chat about what they are gonna do and this idea of going back to Terrasen. And you get kind of an inside look of Ren and his thought process and his concerns about going back. Obviously, we know Aelin is terrified to go back because she became Otterlin's assassin to survive, and she feels like that she abandoned her entire kingdom. Adian also feels very similarly, like he pretty much went and worked with the enemy for so long and like killed people. And so Ren feels the same way. He's like, I went and did bad things on behalf of like to survive, and like he's associated with the opium den and like all of these other things. And he talks about how he lost his family and his sisters. So you learn that he has 2 sisters, and he struggles with this idea of like what happens if we actually break the curse on magic. And clearly it didn't help because my 2 sisters were at magic school, which is like in their eyes like the safest place for them to be, and they still didn't make it. And this idea that like 10 years ago there was magic and we still fell. So like even if we get magic back, like, does it actually make a difference? I just thought it was a nice little touch because you don't really get much about Ren except for it's just him and his grandfather that are left.
I mean, the idea that even if we get magic back, they don't know if it'll help is like a very common theme even in the first part. I mean, they have a conversation specifically about like that, like their court seems so terrifying or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why not mine? Like, why would mine have fell?
Mm-hmm.
So we flip. We've got our intro on what the boys in Rifthold are doing. Our intro for Manon for part 2 is she's like a little stressed out because Abraxos like is not flying. She's like in so much trouble if he does not get him like off the ground.
Yeah.
And she decides on an insane plan to go find these ancient spiders who their silk is like insanely sought after. Like it is, people go and will trade their actual lives to get some of this. Like they'll trade power, they'll trade whatever they have to get this stuff. It's supposed to be like insanely strong. And she's thinking that if she can get some, she can weave or reinforce like his tail. Is it his tail
wings.
Or his wing?
His wings. Yeah.
She's thinking that if she can go and get some of this, she can reinforce his wings with the silk, and then he'll be able to fly because it should be like absolutely able to withstand the type of like flying and it would have the durability. But she goes and tricks them, which is like not the greatest plan for mythical beings to deal with them. But I do appreciate... I forgot when I was rereading it that she tricks them. She basically goes in and says, I'm going to need this much of it. I need, like, a lot. So the spiders are like, okay, that's going to be pricey. Like, you're going to have to give us a pretty good... The spider wants her face. Mm-hmm. She wants
her, like, beauty.
Her beauty.
Yeah.
And Manon's response initially in her head is, I mean, I could get by without that. It's helpful sometimes, but I don't really care.
Yeah.
It's like, they're not vain at all. They, like, recognize the fact that having beauty is useful when
manipulating people.
Like, it's useful for manipulation. It is a good tool, but, like, you know, one of the other clans is supposed to be, like, ugly, come from Volg, and they do just fine, so...
Yeah.
Like, she thinks about it. So she ends up asking, like, I want all of this, but I want to see it and, like, test it out. So she asks them for, like, a test sample of it so that she can look and, like, verify that it's going to be actually what she needs. Mm-hmm. And they, like, bring out a test sample, and she's like, yeah, this looks good, and then, like, books it out of there. Like,
well, first she says, there's an imperfection here. Can I expect the rest of it to be similarly marred? The spider hissed, and the ground thudded as she neared. Abraxos stopped her with a warning growl and set the other 3 coming up behind her guards, but Manon held up the swatch to the light. Look, Manon said, pointing to a vein of color running through it. That's not imperfection, the spider snapped. Look in the better light. You think I'm going to give away my beauty for second-rate weaving? And I was just like, oh no, ma'am, don't talk to them that way. And of course the spider's like, second rate? And then of course Manon says, no, it appears I'm mistaken. I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the bargaining mood today. And then the 2 of them just, boom, like dip off the side of the mountain as they previously had planned, apparently. As the beginning of their interaction starts, Manon, like, responds to the spider saying, the world is changing, sister. Sister, the spider mused, I suppose we are sisters, you and I. 2 faces of the same dark coin from the same dark maker. Sisters in spirit, if not in flesh. And this is like a little drop of lore that they give you because you learn that the spider, like from this little bit of information, you learn that the spiders were also a descendant of the Volg, is what my understanding is. And so the witches are also a descendant of the Volg. So they have the same maker in a sense. She even goes on to say that I see now, Manon said softly, why my blue blood sisters still worship you. And so some of this is like you get this like little bit of lore download from the conversation, but it's also Manon trying to butter up the spider, like for sure, to be like, oh, we're sisters. I know why the blue bloods still praise you. Like, you are like a wonderful being. You're definitely like top tier. So like, of course I would come
and then
to
she
you.
just shoots all of it in the foot after she's
And then she's like,
any buttering
JK,
up is like,
I'm leaving.
Psych! Get wrecked. I'm out. Thanks for the stuff.
This is also in the same exact time as they're traveling. They go to sleep in a cave and it's raining and like super stormy, and she wakes up to Abraxos like blocking her with his like wing.
Yeah.
To like protect her from the elements because she was like shivering, and it's like just a chip away from her frozen rock hard heart, just a little bit, and you're like, yes.
Only for Abraxos.
Yes, only for Abraxos.
It's so nice. They feel.
Turns out, the spider still worked. They put it on Abraxos. She starts test flying him around, and it, like, for all intents and purposes, seems like it works just fine. At this point, they still haven't, like, taken the, like, big, deep cliff dive that they're supposed to take to be able to compete in the war games, but she puts him through like rigorous tests outside of that. Like they're taking deep dives in other locations, really testing out his wings to make sure they work. She does try to take him to do the jump, and he is very against it. Abraxos is scared, rightfully so. He doesn't know if he can make it through the jump, and so Manon gets frustrated, yells and says, take him and put him in the dungeon or whatever, like put him in a cell.
And this is all happening like in front of other people because they had been like scheduled to train, and she was going to go and try to do the jump. So then of course like
everyone
opposing clans show up to like watch her, and she can't convince Abraxos to go off the end, so she sends him back. And fucking Iskra.
As they're taking him back,
bitch.
Iskra grabs a whip and starts whipping Abraxos. And of course, Manon fucking snaps because fuck Iskra. She kicks her ass like into the next day. So
yeah, Iskra basically is like, he's just not doing it because he doesn't have enough discipline, and then whips him as a way to discipline him, and also because she knows it's going to piss Manon off.
Yeah.
And just, surprise, surprise, gets the shit beaten out of her because you don't touch Abraxos, okay? Yeah. You can't do that.
The thing that
I would also have beaten the shit out of her.
Yeah, so the thing I liked about it too is they talk about, so Manon obviously beats her up, and then later she is then given lashings in front of everyone as a reprimand for an attack on another coven, because the wyverns are considered part of their coven now. And then she was also Manon was offered to be able to hit her as well, because all their punishments
she could have she could have chosen to give her the lashes herself, and she chooses not to.
Yeah,
because she's like, nah, it's not.
I beat her up enough. It's fine.
I'm good. Thanks though. I appreciate it, but I got other shit I gotta do.
I do like though that she gets reprimanded by her grandmother because she's like, he didn't fly, like like you're a sorry excuse for a witch, and like the wyvern, your
Mhm.
runt of a wyvern didn't fly. But I do like that like the other witches and other clans like had her back in the sense that like no, you don't touch another witch's property.
Yeah.
Like in this sense, the wyverns are their property. It'd be like in their, I guess, olden days
Even
if
if it's
he
not coming from a
broke their broom.
sentimental, yeah, like it's not coming from a sentimental place for some of them, but it's like that's an insult. You
Mm-hmm.
touch someone else's shit, you're going to get your shit rocked. So, works for me. I'll take whatever we can get at this point. But Petra does end up going to see her like later and brings a gift for Abraxos and says that her wyvern has brought a Braxos like a gift of like meat because they notice that like they've been eating meat that they catch themselves. And Keely, her wyvern is named Keely, and Petra tells Manon like Keely wanted this to give this to Abraxos, and Manon's like, "What are you talking about? Keely wanted like your wyvern, like they don't talk, they don't understand." And Petra just goes, "Yours don't, they don't talk to you? Yours
Doesn't
don't
your
talk to you?"
yeah, like doesn't he?
And Manon's like, doesn't let her like know that like yeah, absolutely he talks to me, but like she knows that there's some sort of communication that they can have, and obviously Petra's is strong enough that she either can genuinely just talk to Keely or it's just so like they have just an easy way of communicating that it feels like talking. So like we get more, not just that they're like super empathetic or smart and that they like care about the people that are writing them, but also that they have this form of communication and that they care about the other wyverns too. It's not like the same way that the witches just have inherent like combativeness against each other.
Yeah.
And Keely was also trained the way that all the other wyverns were. Like she was not originally a bait beast and then like was trained differently. Like she was trained the same way that all of the others were to like fight and kill and be ruthless. And Keely's just a little sweethearted instead.
Mm-hmm. I love the like the little bit more of the. It feels to me that like maybe she can't actually communicate with Abraxos because she's still so
Like closed off.
yeah, I think that's what it is. Like the blue bloods are very like open. They do like openly worship things and they like openly talk to other species and they even in like the first scenes of the wyverns coming out and the base bait beast being introduced, it's mentioned that like you hear a like uptake of breath from Petra because it's like the three airs are next to each other and she immediately has like a visceral reaction to the idea of one of these beings being chained up and then just attacked over and over.
Yeah.
So it's like the blue bloods have more of a physical attachment to animals in some way, it feels like, versus there's more Volg with the um black beaks, and then obviously the yellow legs are probably just rotten to their core. Based off Iskra.
Probably. Because
I don't know about the rest of them.
shit.
Iskra, and then what did I?
We don't care about the rest of them.
What was I
None
calling
of
the
the
other
other
one?
ones have names. I don't
Baba
think.
Yaga, Baba Yellow Legs.
Baba Yellow Legs, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, she wasn't great either, so we've got 2 for 2 in the shit bag.
Two examples
you know?
of yellow legs that are not great.
Not great.
Yeah.
Don't like them. 2 is enough for me to hate an entire entire coven of witches. Aelin is still in Mistward, and she immediately is like, "Oh, she has a dream about Adian?"
So this is just Rowan and Celaena or Aelin they pretty much agreed at the end of part 1 that they're going to be doing this together. They're going to heal together. So like little by little throughout part 2, you get a little bit of his background, a little bit of her background, and it's kind of this like download. So it starts off with her trying to figure out how he learned how to tattoo, and he mentions that when he was a soldier for this one commander. The commander used to tattoo fallen soldiers on on like other captains when they've lost people in their troop. And so he learned how to tattoo from that. And so you get a little bit of that. And then as like a caveat to him, he asks about her family. And so she starts telling him, "Oh, I had a cousin that was really important to me, and his name was Adian." She doesn't say his name, but it's where you get this kind of inner dialogue. "I had a cousin, he was 5 years older than me, and we fought and loved each other like siblings." Like, you get this little bit of, there was someone super close to me that I no longer have contact with right now.
Yeah.
I think
what I think is funny about the conversation that they have about it is that her inner dialogue is like, oh, he'd be so disappointed in me and would never talk to me once he finds out what I did. And not 2 chapters earlier, Adian's like, she'll never talk to me. She'll be so disappointed. And I'm like, guys, let's just hold the pity parties for a little bit, okay? You don't know. Maybe it'll be fine. You don't know what she's been doing this whole time.
Yeah, Rowan pretty much asks her, "Do you think," he said after a moment, "your cousin would kill you or help you? An army like his could change the tide of any war." Because
they
knows
they know that he's the
captain,
like they know that he is this captain, that he's this captain, and that he has like the Bane and stuff.
Yeah.
Or at least Rowan knew. No, she's known because
she knew
been, like,
because
known.
After she left, she I don't know if she heard that he was going back, but she mentions at some point in part 1 that like she was grateful they didn't cross paths, because he would have known immediately, because
he would have recognized her,
have
100%.
the exact same eyes. Like, they look.
And I think she also mentions that like other people probably would have noticed because they have the exact same eyes.
You two look very similar to each other. What the heck?
What's going on here? She also mentions she does not want the main reason that she doesn't want the crown is because she says that it's just another like cage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she wants to execute what she's trying to get done, which is like free Eelway, do the stuff, and then she wants to be able to go and live her life somewhere else. She doesn't want to like be the queen of Terrasen and like have to rule over a people and deal with that. She's like done. She wants to go and live a normal life somewhere else.
I just want to be a girl. I'm
It's
just
so
a girl.
sad. I'm just a girl.
She just wants to be a girl, which is fine.
Yeah. And Rowan is having none of it.
Yeah, so she compares it to shackles as well, like you said. And then she kind of downloads a little bit of how Arabin used to chain her and make her get out of it. It's how she knew how to get out of, I don't know, a set of chains in her fight with Baba Yellowlegs. She knew exactly how to get out of them because she was trained that way. But, it wasn't done in, the best manner. So, of course, Rowan, like, grits his teeth and is, like, upset and does the normal, like, Faye angry, you hurt someone I care about, grr.
And she's also specifically tells him about that stuff because it's true, and she'll give him a little bit, but she does not tell him about Endovier, like, still. Like, she does not want that, what she thinks will be pity. So she still doesn't tell him about Endovier, but they do talk about her. Like, they just are starting to, like, actually trade backstory and talk with each other.
They get to a point where he kind of asks her to say more, and she goes, "You thought I was just going to spread my whole history at your feet the moment I met you? I'm sure you have even more stories than I do, so stop looking so surprised. Maybe we should just go back to beating each other into a pulp." This one, I took a note at the end, and I will tell you after I'm done reading it. In my Kindle, it is written in all caps. His eyes gleamed with near predatory intent. "Oh, not a chance, princess. You can tell me what you want, when you want, but there's no going back now." She lifted her tools again. "I'm sure your other friends just adore having you around. a feral smile, and he grabbed her by the chin. Not hard enough to hurt, but to get her to look at him. First thing, he breathed, we're not friends. I'm still training you, and that means you're still under my command. The flicker of hurt must have shown because he leaned closer, his grip tightening on her jaw. Second, whatever we are, whatever this is, I'm still figuring out too. So if I'm going to give you the space you deserve to sort yourself out, then you can damn well give it to me too. She studied him for a moment, their breath mingling. Deal, she said. And I wrote, all caps, Daddy? Question mark? Excuse me? Daddy?
It's the chin grab.
It's the just
the classic.
Hmm? Excuse me, Daddy, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, we can go back to talking about the fact that Rowan is definitely significantly older. Again, it doesn't count if it's an old female, okay? It doesn't count. The age gaps don't count.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Rowan is like 100% a man, and Kale and Dorian were boys. So the tone of the conversations changed drastically.
Yep.
When she talks with Rowan than when she talks with either of those two boys. Kale more than Dorian, but it's fine. Even though I think Kale might actually be older.
He's 22, I think. Or
Yeah.
at least he was. I don't know. I don't know how many times have passed that they've aged, but
I think it might have only been a year because she only has her birthday once. Or at least they mention her birthday once.
they mentioned Kale's birthday. They have a celebration for his birthday. Or
it's Kale's birthday. You're
Yeah.
right. It's not her birthday.
The thing that happened with her, it was the 10-year. It was like the anniversary of her.
Yep. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, we get a snippet of Dorian and Sorsha as well. The last of the like important group of characters to get their introduction.
Yeah.
And they're just being like cute and flirty.
I did highlight a little thing, and if I asked for the moon on a string, then I would start praying to Deanna. I thought that was cute.
Very cute.
That Dorian says to
I mean, Dorian has a way with words. Like, he's
smart.
He is smart, and I think he's definitely, like, the more romantic of the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when he goes in hard and fast, and he is just, like, very wrapped up in Sorsha. They get interrupted by Kale, like, needing to have a conversation with Dorian. Because Dorian's got a theory. But on their way, he, like, gives him a little bit of shit about,
he pretty much
like,
asks...
Dorian, Kale is, like, trying to kind of, like, apologize for, like, not bringing him into the loop, and Dorian's like, shove it, like, I don't want your apology, basically. Like, he doesn't really give a shit. And he asks, like, about, they talk about, like, Celaena a little bit, and this is still one of my favorite conversations between Dorian and Kale, and it's still one of the reasons that I don't like Kale as a character. This whole paragraph, Kale basically is saying, like, I had to get Celaena out of this castle because it was too dangerous, and she was what she was becoming. And Dorian says, she was not becoming anything different from what she always was, and always had the capacity to be. You just finally saw everything, and once you saw that other part of her, Dorian said quietly, it had taken him until Sorsha, to understand what that meant. You cannot pick and choose what parts of her to love. He pitied Kale, he realized. His heart hurt for his friend, and for all that Kale had surely been realizing these past few months. Just as you cannot pick which parts of me to accept. I don't. You do. But what's done is done, Kale. There is no going back, no matter how hard you try to change things. Like it or not, you played a role in getting us all to this point. You set her down that path to revealing what and who she was, to whatever she decides to whatever she decides to do now. You think I wanted any of this to happen? Chaos blade his arms. If I could, I would put it all back the way it was. If I could, she wouldn't be queen and you wouldn't have magic. Of course you see the magic as a problem, and of course you wish she wasn't who she is, because you're not really scared of things. You're not really scared of those things, are you? No, it's what they represent. The change. But let me tell you, Dorian breathed, his magic flickering, then subsiding in a flash of pain. Things have already changed, and changed because of you. I have magic. There is no undoing that, no getting rid of it. And as for Celaena, he clamped down on the power that surged as he imagined. For the first time, he realized what it was to be her. As for Celaena, he said again, you do not have the right to wish she were not what she is. The only thing you have the right to do is decide whether you are her enemy or her friend. It literally still makes me tear up. It's sometimes I read some of the stuff that Dorian says out loud and I'm like, is this the same dude? But also and the reason that I still dislike Kale, especially during this book, is because I think literally like 2 chapters from now, he's like, yeah, I thought about the conversation that I had with Dorian and it didn't change how I felt at all. And I was like, I can't. I cannot like you. How do you listen to that whole conversation and you don't have some sort of introspective thought about like, he had a point, but, oh well, I'll just continue to not look into that further. Ugh! You cannot pick and choose which parts of her to love. Ugh. And then the only thing you have a right to do is to decide whether you are her enemy or her friend. Yeah. Figure it out. Pick one. He says later, I've already made my decision about her. Dorian's like, I'm done. Like, I made my decision. Figure it out. Like, you have to figure out whose side you're on. It's so nice.
I have no counter to that because I fully agree.
No response because I'm right. You can't respond.
Well, I mean,
agree.
I don't have a hatred for Kale because I've not read the whole series, and I feel like you still have a lot of hatred for Kale from other things that happen later in the series.
I don't know, this is a pretty big one.
Of this, I would say this book for me was a redemption for Dorian.
Fair,
because I did not care for either of them really going into this book. In book 1, I liked Kale more. Book 2, they both were being idiots, so I was just like, I can't be bothered. Book 3, Dorian is redeeming himself, and Kale's still where he was.
I also think in the first part of this book too, he's like, he doesn't do a whole lot. Like to be fair, he's left out of a whole lot, so I give him that pass in terms of in the first.
He's still trying to figure out his magic.
He's trying to figure out his magic, but in terms of like doing anything to help further the cause of like, you know, his dad being a piece of shit, like he's not really doing anything. Kale's like working with them, and Adian is working towards it, and even Aelin and Rowan are like, you know, they're doing whatever they're doing in Mistward, but like Dorian's left out. And then like as soon as he gets brought in, it's like, all right, great. What are we doing? How can I help?
We flip over to Adian and Murtaugh and Ren, and there we get a bit of lore again. So they're finally looking into kind of the information they found out from when they're in the bar scene. So Adian is really honed in on Noel and
Amaroth.
Yeah, Amaroth. So Adian is pretty much figuring out a little bit more information from Murtaugh about Noel and Amaroth. And Murtaugh went and gathered more info, as he does. And he went and talked to a pirate lord. and this pirate lord said that they passed a like kingship. They believe that it is Narok moving from where he was stationed to another place. And during this passage, the pirate also say that they saw a being that looked like a man, but also didn't look like a man, and they were wearing a like necklace, a black onyx like
Collar.
collar,
Basically.
pretty much. They
They
even
describe it like staring at them
yeah,
and then like getting ready to attack them and then turning around and leaving as if like being called back to like wherever they
to
were.
something else, yeah.
Yeah. And they end up basically revealing that like Narok is going to Wendlin.
Yeah.
Which obviously makes all of them panic because they all turn to
Well,
Kale and they're like, Kale, you shit! You sent her to Wendlin and now they're on the way to Wendlin!
well, at this point, do Ren and Murtaugh know? No, they do.
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
they don't know it's Aelin.
I mean, doesn't
Aedion
Aedion in
knows.
this chapter
Aedion
like
knows.
literally look at Kale and go,
No, so
send her away.
to Wendlin, Murtaugh said, Aedion's heart, damn him, stopped. Narok took the fleet to Wendlin to launch a surprise attack. That's impossible, the captain said, shooting to his feet. Why? Why now? Because someone, the old man said, convinced the king to send his champion there to kill the royal family. What better time
Right.
to try out these alleged monsters than when the country is in chaos? So at this point, Ren and Murtaugh don't know that it's Aelin. Aedion does.
But
So
they're still
Aedion is
like,
freaking the fuck out.
they know at least that like it's kind of Kale's fault because someone
Yes.
convinced the king to send the champion over there. And then if she's successful, then it's like ripe for the taking.
Yeah, pretty much.
So they're not necessarily frustrated at him for sending Aelin specifically, but they're frustrated at him for putting all of this in motion pretty much.
Because he sent her there, the
Yeah.
king now has a reason to like test out his
Look,
like
you want
first
to
tools
choose
of
a
war.
catalyst for everything that happens in this book. It's Kale. Kale is the catalyst. One decision that he made for someone else and things would have been very different. It's fine.
One of the many decisions he made for someone else.
Yeah, sure. Yes, come to my side, please. Put more of this at Kale's feet.
So, of course, they try to figure out what to do with this new information. They try to get word out, send warnings, but they really can't. They don't have any ties to Wendlin. Terrasen and Wendlin, this is where you get a little information on Aedion's point of view of like Terrasen and Wendlin cut ties a long time ago. And he didn't fully know why, but he just knows that they cut ties. And so they don't have any way to like send information because they don't have any
like
connection.
good lines of communication between those two groups. So
yeah, we keep looking for ways to help here because I do not believe for one moment that His Majesty's newest surprises were located only in the Dead Isles or islands. It's probably islands. Isle just seems more fantasy like.
I don't know.
It says islands. I added in isles. Because why
not?
My brain just filled in the blank. Honestly, I looked up,
filled
in the blank, then I went back and I was like,
yeah,
that says islands.
Read the rest of it. Yep, that says islands. My bad.
Mm-hmm. We have the note of, oh no. No shit, Kale fucked up.
Surprise. Do we need to start a counter? Kale fucked up counter.
I guess.
What is the one that fantasy fangirls have? It's the, damn it, Dane!
God fucking damn it, Dane.
We've got Kale fucked up again. God damn it, Kale.
Like, no shit, he fucked up again. This is your point of where Kale kind of admits that he hasn't really changed his mind about what side he's on. And he's still...
Literally at the end of this chapter is when he's like, let me find the actual line. Dorian had been right about Celaena, about Kale resenting her darkness and abilities and true identity, but it hadn't changed how he felt. Great! Thanks. So glad that we got that tidbit. I still don't like you. Moving on.
Yeah, Adian pretty much calls him out and says, I still don't quite grasp your role in things, Captain. You're not fighting for Aelin or for Terrasen. For what, then? The greater good? Your prince? Whose side does that put you on? Are you a traitor? A rebel? No, Kale's blood chilled at the thought. I'm on neither side. I only wish to help my friend before I leave for Aniel.
Oh my god.
Just
so frustrating.
grow a set.
I like how he's like, still the idea of him being a traitor to that piece of shit king, like, makes him feel nauseous.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, I would be feeling nauseous to not be a traitor to this man at this point.
Yeah, for being on his side.
He knows too much. We could go on forever. He still bugs me. So we return to Celaena and Rowan.
Yeah, we're back at Mistward.
They have been training. Like, they fall into, like, a nice, easy pattern. She talks about how she is, like, happy to kind of be on a consistent schedule and that, like, she knows what her days look like. She wakes up, she works, like, in the kitchen, they train, she sleeps. Like,
She's falling in love with her power as well, and not...
Yeah.
She doesn't see it as, like, a scary thing anymore, which I think is such a great little point that they make at the beginning when they start talking about that. Is, like, it's part of her, and she can either, like, be scared of it and, like, try to just dampen it down, or she can be open to it and know how to control it. Pretty much, yeah, he convinces her that it's a tool and not something to be feared, which I think is great. We love Rowan right now.
And he's training her, like, they're both kind of training with around the idea of, like, that well of power thing too. Which they, now that she's not as afraid of her power, they, like, it is something that they need to start, like, training and figuring out, is, like, how deep is the well of power, getting her to practice, like, bringing up the power and holding it until it's ready for her to use it. All of that. And part of her training, like, there's a celebration that's coming up that's called Beltane, which is, like, a celebration that the Fae and magic wielders, like, follow. So there wasn't really it wasn't a huge celebration in Otterland because magic is outlawed. They would still like, allow some minor stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing like what she'll be able to experience, like, at Mistward, because they still have magic. And she's also excited because it'll be more similar to, like, what she would have experienced when she was a kid.
Her mom used to tell her that,
really
like,
cute.
This was a celebration for her because Beltane is for, I believe, for the fire goddess, is kind of like the background. It kind of revolves around fire and flame and that kind of power. And so as a child, her mom would say that, like, this is a celebration of you and your thing. And then there's a note of Aelin Fireheart and Aelin of the Wildfire, which I thought was, like, such a cute little, like, it's her. Like, this is her celebration. Even though it pretty much goes towards her heritage of kind of that fire line.
And it's,
where she
like,
gets her powers.
Like, there's so many fires out burning. It was her night. Her mother had said, a night when a fire-bearing girl had nothing to fear, no powers to hide. So cute.
So good. Part of Of course, Rowan makes this part of her training, as he likes to make
We can't
weird
enjoy anything.
scenarios. You can't just go and have fun and dance. You have to light all of the fires. There's going to be a really big bonfire in the middle, and then you're going to have 2 fires on the edge, and you have to light them, and you have to hold them, and they have to be steady flames for the whole night. Good luck.
It's all your responsibility.
Don't let them go too high. Don't let them simmer down. You have to consistently create fire. And so there's a point where, of course, they are going back and forth. It's their typical like banter. So I think in his mind, he doesn't really think anything of it, at the moment. So she pretty much says, she asks when can I stop? And he says, when I say so. And she's like, okay. Well, I'm sweating and I'm hungry and I don't want to do this anymore. And he's just like, oh, so we're going to resort to whining now? And so, of course, they're like sassing each other. Funny. But,
we're in fun sassing now, though, because like the sassing before was not sassing. That was just, they were just being assholes to each other. So now we're getting like the good Sarah J. Maas banter that we get in like all of the other series that she writes. So this is
what I really
love these conversations between the two of them.
Yeah. What I really liked is that after he says resorting to whining, a cool breeze licked up her neck. And we know that he has the power of like wind and ice. And so we know he like sends a little breeze at her to like, yeah, you're sweating. Here you go.
Cool
Here's a little like,
so nice.
You're fine. And he's like, just a little while longer. So she, of course, is relieved, which I think in this moment it like puts down this like wall for her almost. So she's like,
she
okay,
gets
I only have to do this a little bit longer. It's fine. And she just kind of sits back into that and doing this like monotonous, in her brain, monotonous task of just like, okay, just hold the flame. And then she starts hearing the music and she's like kind of like swaying sort of to the music. It's like the fire is now really like filling her in a way that she hasn't experienced before. She gets this like, they describe it almost how people describe when they kind of are about to freeze to death on like Mount Everest. They describe that they get this like euphoria.
Oh yeah.
They don't feel cold and they don't feel pain. She like gets this state of like euphoria with her flame, which I thought was like such a great way to describe it, because obviously we as people can't know that experience, but the only like close thing we could potentially have is something like that. It's like you're dealing with the elements and your body is like, you get to a point where you just like are comfortable again. So you're like uncomfortable and then
the numb is not good.
Yes. So
there he's like telling her to like ease up and like focus on the music and like try to like focus her control. And she just kind of is like still in her head, like having these feelings of like everything's comfortable. He sounds stressed. Everything's fine. Like all
great.
Like I don't understand
like, this
why
feels good.
Yeah, like I don't. Why was I scared of this in the first place? This feels fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "That's enough," and she doesn't stop. And he says it again, and he goes to grab her to like pull her, like shake her out of it, basically. And
her skin is like hot to the touch.
He like hisses and lets go of her, and he's like starting to get stressed out now because he thinks that she's like burning out.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't see it coming. She had no idea what it was gonna feel like, and it's just like, all is well. We're good. This feels great. Like, I feel good. Fine. And it like turns bad fast. So she starts like immediately feeling like her entire body is burning from the inside out, and they are in like a full panic. He has to like grab her and kind of try to pull her out of it. He finds like a healer to help. And
one of the first things before he runs off with her, he apologizes to her he pretty much like suffocates her to put out the fire on her inside. So he goes, "I'm sorry," Rowan hissed, swearing again, and the air vanished. She tried to groan, to move, but she had no air. No air for that inner fire. Blackness swept in. So he pretty much like, at least it's described this way, that he, similar to when he put out the fire that she created when she like made a blast from like an outburst,
Yeah.
he did the same thing again. He just like took all the air away because he can manipulate it in that way to like
Yep.
get her body to instantly like stop doing flame. And then he picks her up and like runs to the castle, or not castle, to the, where are they staying? Like the,
He runs to
this
like
word.
get a healer to help her, and
Yeah.
then she basically says like we need to get her in cold water like right now. To like bring her temperature down. And the way that they describe how that whole situation
It's
goes
so
down is
good.
genuinely so cool. They like he picks her up and carries her all the way to like wherever the baths are to put her in the baths, and he goes to place her, like they tell him to like make it really cold, and he goes to place her in the bath, and it starts like hissing
And
and
bubbling.
like steaming, and then it starts bubbling, and they're like, get her out, get her out of the tub right now, because her body was so hot she started boiling the water just by like existing. So he like takes her back out, and then like puts
refreezes
her
it and
back
puts her
in,
back in. Yeah.
and like is just spending time like making sure that the water stays cold, like while she's basically like her whole body is like trying to boil the water. It's insane. And like slowly things start like calming down, and he doesn't have to spend like so much time or energy like keeping the water cold, and she just kind of plateaus.
Yeah, so she plateaus in the bath in the sense that like she's no longer creating or like
She's
pulling
not
up
boiling
magic.
alive from the inside out.
Yeah, she's still overheated compared to what she should be, and he's still cooling the water consistently for a bit. But one of the healers pretty much says like, we need to get these clothes off of her, like she needs to be just her skin to cold water. And so they do that. He finally doesn't have to really like cool the water off anymore. And he asks her to answer just like yes or no. Like you don't have to speak, just like nod your head if needed. Are you in danger of flaring up again? She breathed as evenly as she could, the heat pounding in her cheeks, her legs, her core, but it was steadily diminishing. No, she whispered, a brush of hot air from her tongue. Are you in pain? Not a sympathetic question, but a commander assessing his soldier's condition to sort out the best course of action. Yes. A woman said, we will prepare a tonic, just keep her cool. Then he, of course, says, the burnout, Rowan said quietly. You should have told me you were at your limit. If you'd gone any longer, the burnout would have destroyed you. You must learn to recognize the signs and how to pull back before it's too late. It will rip you apart inside. Make this, he shook his head again, make this look like nothing. You don't touch your magic until you've rested for a while, understand? She tilted her head up, beckoning for more cold water on her face. I'm going to check on the tonic. I'll be back soon. He then walks out of the room. She finally is like coherent enough to like know what's going on. She leans forward to like, I don't know, stretch out her body. She's just, burned up from the inside out. So she's trying to move her body in a manner. They pretty much said she like sits forward and like hugs her knees in like a, and then Rowan comes back in and he freezes at the door. And it's because her back is now exposed for the first time in front of him, and he sees 3 scars down her back. The door opened. Rowan. She kept herself in the cool darkness, savoring the growing chill. His breath caught, harsh enough that she looked over her shoulder, but his eyes weren't on her face or the water. They were on her bare back. Curled as she was against her knees, he could see the whole expanse of ruined flesh, each scar from the lashings. Who did that to you? The second I read that, my brain went, where is he? Batman.
Batman.
It would have been easy to lie, but she was so tired, and he had saved her useless hide. So she said, "A lot of people. I spent some time in the salt mines of Endovier." So this is the first time she tells him that she was in
Yeah.
Endovier. So up until this point, all of her like actions, as we knew from part one, he kind of treated her as if she was like a little spoiled brat and just like got whatever she wanted. This is the first time he's really getting into like knowing her.
Yeah. He asked how long she was there for, told him a year, and then basically was like, it's a long story. She's like too tired to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "You were a slave." She gave him a slow nod. He opened his mouth but shut it and swallowed, that lethal rage winking out, as if he remembered who he was talking to and that it was the least punishment she deserved. He turned on his heel and shut the door behind him. She wished he'd slammed it, wished he'd shattered it, but he closed it with barely more than a click and did not return. So this next chapter is in Rowan's perspective, and this is like the first moment where I'm like, I think I love Rowan. I think I might, maybe I love him. She doesn't need him. I'll take him. I don't know. Like, I just, ugh. He's like, she says, as if it was the least punishment she deserved. And I remember reading that and being like, excuse me, what? Huh?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? And then Rowan goes away and is like, I had to leave because I was going to break things. Physically break things.
Mm-hmm.
And he, like, flies away. And then he starts spiraling. And then right towards the end of his spiral, he comes back to reality and is like, oh, I saw
just
her
abandoned
back,
her.
and then I left. She's probably going to take that the wrong way. And I was like, Rowan, yes, please! Like, Jesus!
A man in this book that actually understands what's happening.
Sarah doesn't do a lot of miscommunication, okay? And Sarah, we love you for that. Please continue to not do the miscommunication. Thank you. All of us, collectively. I just... He, like, immediately realizes, damn, she's gonna definitely think that was bad, instead of, like, hey, you needed a second to cool down from pure freaking rage coursing through him. And then immediately returns. Just immediately goes back.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rowan. Rowan's also, like, fucking Maeve knew. 100% Maeve knew, didn't tell him. And so he's, like, pissed at Maeve as well, which is great, because he should be.
Yeah.
And he, like, immediately goes back, and Celaena is, like, taking the tonics that were given to her, and, like, Rowan comes back. Sorry.
In the flicker of dark, he said roughly, "You're staying with me from now on." He pretty much is like, okay, we figured this out. We understand you're not gonna go back and sleep in the barracks that you were sleeping in, which had like a sheet, and she described it as being similar to like any of the other places she that had to like stay that were not great. And he's like, "You're staying with me." And then he puts her in his like big cozy bed and starts a fire. And she's like, "I was just burning up like crazy. I don't necessarily want a fire, but okay, sure, sounds great." And so they have like their little like typical male fae, you're here, I'm going to protect you, you stay here, you don't do anything, you don't magic, you want food, here's food, eat more food, you want some more food, here's some more food,
Takes
how about
care of her.
Yes, he does. Sometimes, as we know from other fays, when they're very overprotective, they're just like, you don't lift a finger, I'm doing it all.
Yeah.
Which, you know, very nice. But she is Celaena
like,
Sardothian, and she's like,
she like initially protests and is like, I don't want your pity. And he's like, it's not pity. Mm-hmm. Maeve, he says, Maeve didn't tell me. Maeve decided not to tell me what happened to you. You have to know that I wasn't aware you had... She slid an arm across the bed to grasp his hand. She knew that if she wanted to, she could strike him a wound so deep it would fracture him. I knew at first I was afraid you'd mock me if I told you I would kill, and if I told you I would kill you for it. Then I didn't want you to pity me more than any of that. I didn't want you to think it was ever an excuse. And Rowan says, like a good soldier. It's like, God damn it. They're so similar. It's so nice. They're
She then
mirrors
tells
of
him,
each other.
Yeah, she then tells him how she got there and then how she got out. So the captain showed up and they pretty much offered her this chance at freedom, and she took it.
Basically, like the plot of the first book, minus the word marks and
word keys
Nehemia
and all that
Elena.
stuff.
Yeah, and they fell asleep holding hands. So
and
great.
she wakes up to him holding her hand like on his chest or something like that, and I was just like,
they fall asleep holding hands, and they wake up, and he's still holding her hand, and then, of course, he becomes insufferable because he won't let her do anything. And she's like, I can do things for myself. Okay?
He just, like, forces her to stay in bed, and she's like, can we go for a walk at least? Like, can
Eat this. It pains me to say this, but one more bite, and I'll be sick all over the place.
So you mean to tell me that whenever someone comes close to burnout, she not only goes through all this misery, but if she's female, the males around her go this berserk? He set down his pen and twisted to examine her. This is hardly berserk. At least you can defend yourself by physical means when your magic is useless. For other Fae, even if they've had weapons and defense training, if they can't touch their magic, they're vulnerable, especially when they're drained and in pain. That makes people, usually males, yes, somewhat edgy. Others have been known to kill without thought, any perceived threat, real or otherwise. Just like,
yep.
All right.
Fae rage. Protective Fae males. It's great. So we also
for a
learn...
slice of bread and a bowl of beef broth. Eat this. I can't eat anymore, please.
Please relax. So she asks him, like, what happens when magic runs out. Like, when your magic runs out. Either you stop or you burn out. And he says, well, there's this thing called Karanon. And it's she says, the old language word was beautiful on his tongue. If she had a death wish, she might have begged him to speak only in the ancient language, just to savor the exquisite sounds. But anyways, so Karanon is a, like, special bond. He basically explains that, like, it's a special bond between two people, and it makes it so that you can share your power between those two people. And it's like, you go into it specifically, like, you choose to do it, and it's something that can only happen between, like, two people who happen to be compatible, and it's also very rare. So he basically describes that, like, if the only other way that you can get more power or to prevent a burnout is if you are Karanon, and then you would basically, like, share the power from your, like, your partner. But it's very dangerous because you have to have, like, complete trust in that other person, because if that person starts burning out, they can burn you out to save them, basically, or burn both of you out and you're both fucked. So
yeah, they can also, like, reverse it and just take your power without, not even just on the verge of burnout, just take it and like keep it. They
talk about, like, the fact that they can use that to steal magic, and that, like, lesser, like, Fae or, like, you know, bad Fae have done that, and that it was outlawed, and that Rowan, like, spent some time actually, like, tracking down the people who had done that, like, for Maeve, and punished them. Like, that was some of the stuff that he spent his time doing when he was working for Maeve. And she basically is like, well, this conversation's become too awful to have after eating. And, like, changes the subject. Tell me which of your little cadre is the handsomest, and if he would fancy me. The thought of you with any of my companions makes my blood run cold. They're that awful? Your kitty cat friend looked decent enough. Rowan's brows rose high. I don't think my kitty cat friend would know what to do with you, nor would any of the others. It would likely end in bloodshed. She kept grinning, and he crossed his arms. They would likely have very little interest in you, as you'll be old and decrepit soon enough, and thus not worth the effort it would take to win you. It's so
She rolled
good.
her eyes. Killjoy.
Not worth the effort it would take to win you is so good. Damn. Yeah, you'll be dead soon. It's too much work.
It's too much work for them. They've been around for too long.
Yeah, they get someone they can spend a little bit more time once they've won. He also like suggests to her like a skilled healer could get rid of the scars, and there is like a really great moment where she describes like that they are her reminder. Like, she does not want to get rid of them because she doesn't want to just like get over it and move past it. It is a reminder to her of like there is a thing she has to go back for. She wants to go back and free all of those people. And it is a constant reminder of what she went through, but also what all of those people are still going through.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was crazy. She's so much stronger than she gives herself credit for.
You also learn about a woman that she interacted with as a kid that she is kind of modeling her behaviors after. So in a similar sense that she doesn't want to like die in vain, like she has all these things that she wants to do. You learn of this woman, you don't know who she is at this point. But you learn that she plays a decent role in Celaena's like upbringing, which I think is a nice little hint and setup for like the next few things we learn about her background.
Yeah. Another line that I really liked in this chapter was, at least if you're going to hell, he said, the vibrations in his chest rumbling against her, then we'll be there together. Mm-hmm. I feel bad for the dark god already. It's so good.
We learn about, this is, her birthday comes and passes when she is cooped up in this room, and he brings her chocolate for her birthday. Yay. Which is so cute. And of course,
he remembers she likes chocolate.
Gives him a little kiss on the cheek, which is our first little like interaction of.
He like tries not to make a big deal about it, mm-hmm. And she, the way that she does it is so cute. And he's like, she basically like rushes over and like places like a big like dramatic kiss on his cheek, and he's like, "Get away from me! Don't like leave me alone. It's fine."
Yeah.
So cute.
Then they start training again, which I think is great. He is trying to get her to train her magic into shapes so that she can defend herself against things. And so this is the first time they're back to training, and he doesn't really go easy on her, I would say. So your fire can take whatever form you wish, the only limit being your imagination, and considering your upbringing, should you go on the offense, you want me to make a sword out of fire? Arrows, daggers, you direct the power, visualize it, and use it as you would a mortal weapon. He smirked, afraid to... This is in italics, so it's not actually said, but I put in all caps, are they actually communicating through a bond? Because I need to know. There was a highlight and note I put in my Kindle. He smirked, afraid to play with fire, princess? you won't be happy if I singe your eyebrows off. Try me. And I'm just like, yes.
You won't be happy if I singe your eyebrows off. So good.
Oh, it's just so good.
She
When you trained as
she
an
writes
assassin,
so
what was your
well.
first thing you learned? To defend myself? He looked amused. Good. He just starts chucking ice daggers at her pretty much.
So good.
And he's like, you need to try to
Let's
make a
find
shield with
out.
your fire. He's like, I'm trying. He's like, clearly not hard enough.
So good. Try harder.
Yeah. Then she gets it, like towards the end of their training, she gets it, and he's like,
Yeah.
we're done for today, go eat something. The circular shield did not burn her, though its flames swirled and sizzled as she commanded it had worked. She raised her eyes to Rowan. No, again. Now that she got it, she's like, this is what I need.
Yeah,
just
he's
keep
like
going.
ready to like reward her and let her stop when she finally gets it. She's like, no, I gotta do it much time. Come on, gotta do it a lot.
Yeah, I need to do it
I have
again.
to perfect it. She was able to like make various sizes and shapes and could have multiple defenses like at one time. Like she's really starting to like master it and get it down.
Mm-hmm. She even goes out in the mornings before
and then
he's
she starts training on her own.
actually training her. Before she's needed in the kitchen, she goes out and starts training on her own. And
Yeah.
so they have to go outside of. There's like a what are they? Wordstones? No. What do they
Like
call
outside
them?
the gates? The
Yeah,
wards? The wards.
the wards.
WARDS, right?
Sorry.
Wards.
She has to go outside the wards to use her powers because it can't go through the ward. And so she goes on the other side and just makes fire daggers and like throws them at the wards, which bounce back to her. So then she also has to make a shield to then block them. And so Rowan like realizes, catches on at some point, and he goes out to where like the guards stand on kind of like the outer perimeter and asks like, how long has she been here? And they pretty much say like, oh, she does this every morning. And it's notated that they have this like respect for her, and at some point she gets hit by one of them and falls to the ground, and she gets back up and starts again. And at no point do any of the guards like scoff at her for falling or kind of make little of her. It's like they're proud of her as well, and they see her and like realize that she's like doing some cool shit.
Yeah. They actually see her trying and have respect for her. And Rowan also finally has more respect for her and realizes, she's not a spoiled princess, really. There's more to her than meets the eye.
Like, oh, maybe she had this mask on.
Maybe she was pretending.
Mm-hmm.
So we go back to the 13. And this is chapter 44 for anyone that wants to go read this, because it's viewed, just figure out, like, read it, please, just read the book. But also, like, if you can't read the book for some reason, go to the library, rent it, like, find somewhere to get it, read chapter 44. So they're training the 13. They are training to fly as a group. She still has not like flown the gap, but they're still preparing for war games as if like that's what's coming up next.
Mm-hmm.
And her grandmother's like pissed still, and she's like, you're going to do this, like you have to fly the gap. And if the 13 had like had this plan of, if they were going, she tries it and for some reason like Abraxos can't do it and fails, the 13 she was basically going to bail off of Abraxos, and the 13 would try to like pick her up and save her. And her grandmother finds out about it and is like, fuck that. No, that's not allowed. If you fail, you die. Because she's just a horrifying human being. Or a horrifying witch. And forces Manon is like, it's happening today. You are going to fly the gap, and like you either die or you live, but it's happening today. And she gets out there, and she, like, Abraxos is still like nervous to do it, and the her grandmother like makes a comment down to them.
We're
But
waiting, Manon. Her grandmother barked from above. She waved a hand toward the cave mouth. But by all means, take your time.
Abraxos
Laughter,
like knows that it's
he
basically
like
targeted
growls
like
at her.
at the two of them, and he looks at her grandmother and growls at her. Manon's like, oh shit, oh my god, what is he doing? And like he knows, she realizes that he knows what's going on, like he knows how much of a big deal it is, and he's like ready to do it but is still nervous. And she they all start like cheering for them and like preparing and like banging against like stuff. And
Well, it started with the wyverns. You hear the wyverns
all
underground
the bait beasts start like yelling,
doing this like pounding with their like tails or with their feet or something. You hear this like chant starting underground, and then the 13 like becomes a part of it, and they start stomping their feet to like really show that they solidify. And then pretty much everyone else is doing the same thing. I mean, I'm sure Iskra's not, but
well, I don't give a shit about Iskra.
we hate her. So
fuck that bitch. And Manon, it goes, Manon gripped Abraxos' snout, forcing his gaze away from her grandmother. Just once, she whispered. All you have to do is make this jump just once, Abraxos, and then you can shut them up forever. Then, rising up from the deep, there came a steady two-note beat, a beat of the chained bait beasts who hauled their massive machines around, like a thundering heart or beating wings. Louder the beat sounded, as if the wyverns down in the pits knew what was happening. It grew and grew until it reached the cavern, until Astrid reached for her shield and joined in, until each one of the 13 took up the beat. You hear that? That is for you. For a moment, as the beat pulsed around them, phantom wings from the mountain itself, Manon thought that it would not be so bad to die, if it was with him, if she was not alone. You're one of the 13, she said to him. From now until the darkness cleaves us apart, you are mine and I am yours. Let's show them why. Yeah! My god, it's so good! Ugh! And he basically was like, fuck yeah, let's go.
And of course,
they jump off the thing and they fly.
Yep.
And she
like sails of a mighty ship, Abraxos' wings unfurled, snapping tight. He tilted them upward, pulling against the death trying to drag them down. And it was those wings covered in glittering patches of spider silk that stayed strong and sturdy, sending them soaring clean up the side of the Omega and into the starry sky behind.
Yay!
Woo!
So great! Abraxos flies the gap! I'm so happy!
Mm-hmm. We love Abraxos. I want a, like, kind of cartoon rendition of Abraxos in a field sniffing a flower.
Oh, like as a sticker?
I just want that.
I'm sure we can find one. It has to be out there. I will look for it. I don't know if there'll be any spoilers out in Abraxos sticker land. If I can find one that's not a spoiler.
Just like a print. It'd be cool. So cool as a print.
Where's I had another. Is this it? Abraxos crochet pattern, so I'll put it on the same one. This is my note from last time. It's just a napkin for anyone that's listening. It's just a napkin and it has a box on it that just says Abraxos crochet pattern.
And now she's writing it in Sharpie.
Writing it in Sharpie on... Look, I didn't have a notebook, okay? I didn't have one in front of me. What else am I looking for? Abraxos.
Print or sticker.
Flower.
The flower.
Abraxos sniffin flowers. If this makes it in the episode, please feel free to send us those. If you already know of one existing, put it in the comments or send it to us on Instagram or on TikTok. Especially on TikTok, because that's the one that Kat checks more frequently than I do.
There's another corpse that appears. We're back in Mistward with Rowan and Celaena. And of course, Rowan takes her, because at this point, they're just a team. Now they like move in unison, going pretty much everywhere. She notices again immediately that second smell was here too. So like there's this scent that they're still not sure what it is. She has experienced it when her parents died. She experienced it with the other bodies. She experienced with the when she was in the field and that like darkness went over her. She like it always comes back to this like wrong smell that they keep finding. The thing with this corpse that they find, they notice something different. And she notices that it has torn clothes and what look like small cuts along its palms, as if he dug in his fingernails. The others had barely been touched, but this, and of course she's like, Rowan, do you see what I'm seeing? He fought. Like, he fought against them. And then she looks under his fingernails, and he scratched at the beast. So he was digging, you find out that he was digging his fingernails into his hand so that he could feel something and ground himself to fight against it, taking him over. And then he also like hit it, scratched it, like physically fought it. And so some of its like skin and blood was like under its nails. And of course, she cleans out a bit of it from under
Detective Aelin on the case.
And what the hell is that? Rowan demanded. Dirt and black. Just utter black. It was blacker than night and reeked just as badly as it had the first time she smelled it. In the catacombs beneath the library, an obsidian, oily pool of blood. Slightly different from the other horrific smell that loitered around this place, but similar. So similar. And this is where she realizes that this is a being from the king of Adarlan. And it's here in Wendland, which is supposed to be safe, in her eyes, supposed to be relatively safe in the grand scheme of like being around the king. Like, she believes she's the only thing that's been sent there. And so this is when she realizes, like, oh no, the king might have something else planned, which isn't great. She then kind of gives him a little bit of download just to say, like, I'm not really sure what they are. I just know that they're part of, like, they're from the king. It has to do with word keys. They're being made pretty much by the king.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope I'm wrong, but that smell, I'll never forget that smell as long as I live. Like, it had rotted from the inside. Its very essence ruined.
She's very nervous now that the creature, she makes the realization that the creature that was left in the library is similar to she thinks that the creature is killing these people. But she also makes the realization that the creature that was left in the library was like a dud or a reject and was still horrifying and so difficult to have to deal with. And that is considered one of the weak ones. So she starts panicking, not just because she's like, uh-oh, wait, now I know what this is now, but also because she's like, they have no idea what, like, a good one of them is, one that they chose to keep, and why it's here, and how it got here. And just, like, she doesn't know how to deal with it. all she can do is tell him like what she knows of it, and hopefully that they can do something about it.
Yeah. At the end of the scene, Rowan pretty much says, "Burn the body, Aelin." He removed the sheath and belt that he had housed the dagger still dangling from his hand and tossed them to her. She caught them with her free hand. "We're going hunting." She's like, yes.
Yeah. While they're having this conversation, he takes his shirt off and is like messing with his weapons. And then she like starts having thoughts of Kael because they're like talking about the monster that was in the library and stuff. And she makes a comment in her head. She says, it's a damn good thing Rowan had no interest in her either, because she knew she was stupid and reckless enough to consider whether moving on in a physical sense might solve the problem of Kael. Do it! I think it's a great idea. I don't think that it's stupid or reckless. I think that you should absolutely do that immediately. She also like basically like asks him. She's been thinking about Kael, and they end up talking about like mates. She asks if she was really mated with someone, could she actually physically hurt them? Because they've talked about like how protective they are. So if they're that protective, like, could she even be capable of harming a person she's mated with? And she says, if he'd truly been my mate, I wouldn't have been able to do that, would I? He was silent for a long while. You hadn't been in your Fae form for 10 years, so perhaps your instincts weren't even able to take hold. Sometimes mates can be together intimately before the bond actually snaps into place. It's a useless hope to cling to anyway. Do you want the truth? She tucked her chin into her tunic and closed her eyes. Not tonight.
She still holds, like, she wants to be over Kael, like she does, but she still holds on to that, like, little hope that, like, maybe it's not actually as bad.
I think the only reason she really broke up with him in the first place, though, is because, like, she knew she had to go, and she wasn't gonna be... He wasn't gonna be happy with what he learned.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically was like, I have to leave, and you're not gonna like me anyways after you find this out. So, like, I'm just gonna go, and, like, we're done. And I think, because she made the decision not because she wanted to, but because she felt like she had to, so I think that she absolutely is still, like, holding on to that, and doesn't really want to let it go. I think part of it might also, I mean, I want to think at least that part of it might be if Kael still likes her, maybe it redeems her in some way. Like, she's not as bad as she thinks she is if Kael can choose to still love her.
Yeah, she sees him as this, like, very good person still, I think. And so it's definitely difficult. So they now go and finally go on their hunt. Celaena and Rowan.
We're going hunting.
On their hunt, they find out where these beings are coming from. So they obviously know that all the bodies are being dumped by water, not in water, near it. And so she draws a map on the ground and says, we found a body here, we found a body here, we found a body here. And Rowan pretty much concludes that, like, all three of those lead to this one area. So they go and look there. In that area, there are a bunch of, like, caverns, pretty much. And this
they find ships in there.
Yeah, they find I don't know if they find ships docked, but Rowan had mentions that it, like, low tides in this specific spot, so it'd be easy to come through, and there's, like, it's like the only unguarded spot of Wendlin that they could come into. He of course says, "Okay, we're leaving now. Now that they like see this, we're not gonna look right now because it's either too close to darkness. They want to be able to do this in the cover of darkness, so they're not just like full sun on the beach, being like, "Hey, what's going on in there?" Um,
We also
one of the
learn that
quotes, yeah.
this like battalion of soldiers that like that they think that are the ones that are docking here. Like we learn that they are Narok, so like it's the same people that they've talked about, that Adian and Kale like found out about. So it's like this same group. They've made it to Wenlin now. We know.
Yeah.
And Rowan like knows, like Rowan's the one that knows that information and tells Aelin. And they start panicking about like, we need to tell them, like, how do we get word to Wenlin to let them know that they're here and that they're around? And Rowan is like, even if we tried, we would not make it in time to be able to like alert them. Like we don't have the time. But
yeah,
we
he pretty
need
much
to go
says
back to Mistward because
yeah.
they realize that they're going after the Demi-Fae.
Yeah.
Like
because those are the ones that were captured and like killed on the edges of water. They were Demi-Fae.
And they think that they're the ones that are successfully making like the more strong versions of the ones that they found in Otterlin, like the ones that were in the library. So they'd like tried using humans and didn't work out great. Like the ones without magic, it didn't work. People who have magic are turning into these beasts more successfully. So their now main objective is like, great, find more people who have magic and we will turn them into these awful things.
And now they're in Wendelin, so like all the people that have magic have been using it, so they know actually how to manipulate their magic. Versus in Otterlin, they've been withheld from using their magic for so long. At some point, so Rowan flies into the caves, and that's how he gets this information. One of my like favorite things that she says, the crabmonger, Celaena murmured to Rowan in the village. He said he found weapons in his nets. They must be taking ships and then getting close enough to swim through the reef without attracting attention. We need to get a closer look. She raised her brows at Rowan, who gave her a hunter's smile. I knew you'd be useful someday.
As a bird.
So he, of course, flashes and then turns into his hawk form and flies into the caves and then comes back and like gives her all this information.
Yeah.
Of what he saw.
I knew you'd be useful. Such a shithead response. It's so good.
It's so good. So he sends word out to Wenlin soldiers, unsure if they're going to send forces, if they're going to have time, doesn't know.
While they're sending out these messages, they like basically have Rowan has a conversation about whether they send a message to Maeve, because Aelin asks if he sent a message to the rest of the cadre, so the other 4 guys that are part of Maeve's thing, and he basically is like, if I send her a message and she says, like, nope, come back, don't defend them, he has no choice but to do that. Like, he has to follow her orders if he gets orders. So she doesn't know, she can't tell him to come back. And if he risks sending that message and she says to come back, then, like, they're super screwed. And Aelin is basically like, do you believe that she would do that? Like, that she's so, like, cold-blooded that she would leave all of these Demi-Fae here to die? And he basically can't, like...
He can't agree, but
he
implies, like, look what
it's not worth the
happened
risk.
10
It's
years
not worth the
ago.
risk.
Yeah.
And he, like, gets frustrated because she basically, like, gives him a look, and he's like, don't do that, don't look at me like that, with disgust. And she basically is like, I'm not, it's just... And she says, for whatever it's worth, all of this just proves that she doesn't deserve you, and I think you know that. And she also, like, in her head says that she wishes that he could return with her and, like, go to Otterlin with her, but she, like, realizes that, like, that's not possible with him, like, as a bloodsworn to Maeve, because, like, Maeve will never allow that.
Yeah. He's not leaving.
She's, like, really starting to become not reliant on him, but she, like, appreciates the burden that they share together and is starting to recognize that, like, that has an expiration date. And that's making her very sad.
Yeah, because this is the first person since Adian as a child that she's been her full, complete self with someone.
That also hasn't, like, been a shithead about it.
But even that, she was never her full, complete self with Dorian. Like, she withheld stuff from him. She was never her full, complete self with Nehemia. She withheld stuff from her.
Yeah, I think I'm more of referencing, like, Sam, or, like, when she was younger, there were, like, some people that she trusted, but not necessarily, like, within the past, 10 years.
Yeah. They go back to Mistward and start readying Mistward for an attack that they don't know when it's coming. But Rowan pretty much gathered from the way that they were staging within these caves that it was soon. Like, it's gonna happen very soon.
Basically, so while
on their way back.
Yeah, while on their way back, they, like, try to escape, and they realize that, like, one of them is following them. Mm-hmm. And she, like, Rowan's like, we're basically going to use you as bait. And he kind of goes off and hides. And she is kind of left there to wait and, like, wait for his signal. And it doesn't come, and it kind of, like, gets her, and she starts, like, she basically doesn't even fight. Like, she doesn't have a chance to fight because it gets her so quickly. And like, Rowan's able to, like, help her, and, like, they can get away from it, but they basically just have to run. Like, they can't fight it. They don't know how to kill it, and they just run. And she comes with a crazy plan to find the skinwalkers and go run while Rowan distracts it and find the skinwalkers to lure them to where this thing is so that those two can fight. Yeah. And they do it successfully, and they lure the skinwalkers to it, and the screams kind of stop, and it sounds like the skinwalkers, like,
are cheering
and have killed one of them. So they're like, okay, it can be killed. We can kill these things, and this, like, we were able to use the skinwalkers to do it, so, like, at least they can die. And they, like, go back to, like, the fort with that information.
Yeah. They don't bring all this information to Mistward or the people in it. Pretty much, Rowan immediately goes to Malachi, who is, like, Rowan's equivalent, but at Mistward, I would say. Yeah. Like, he's not obviously with the, like, top 5, but he is the trained warrior of Mistward. So, like, he's the one that trains all the demi-fae to be able to go to Dornell. But he is, like, a true warrior in the sense of, like, I don't think he has any restraints against him. Like, he could go to Dornell if he wanted to. He just chooses not to because his mate is at Mistward, and so he just lives his life there. So Rowan knows that, like, they're partially trained. Like, there is a large chunk of people at Mistward that do not have any combat experience. There are a ton of healers. There are a lot of people that are, like, similar to Emery's. He is, like, the head of the kitchen. Like, there's people like that. They have a role at Mistward, but they're not warriors and they're not fighters. And so he is trying to think of ways to utilize, like, they know this land better than these people coming in, so let's use that against them. Like, let's set traps. Like, they set up, pretty much they just create traps and they keep going out and out as far as they can go. with spikes, pitfall traps, snares, like everything they can think of because they want to slow down or take out as many people before they arrive to the walls of Mistward. So then, of course, right before kind of, things happen, um, they get word. So she comes down for breakfast or to do like breakfasty things because that's still part of her duties is like helping Emrys and Luca with breakfast stuff. She comes down and it's quiet. And the last time it was this quiet was when Maeve was there. And so she's like, what's going on, pretty much? And there's like Emrys or Malachi and Rowan were whispering. Emrys and all of them were kind of talking quietly. And Celaena kind of knew something was up. And so, of course, Rowan immediately tells her there was an uprising at the Calcula labor camp, he said. Her heart stumbled on a beat. After Princess Nehemia was assassinated, they say a slave girl killed her overseer and sparked an uprising. The slaves seized the camp. He took a shallow breath. The king of Otterland sent 2 legions to get the slaves under control, and they killed them all. The slaves killed his legions? A push of breath. There were thousands of slaves in Calculia. All of them together would be a mighty force, even for 2 of Otterland's legions. With horrific gentleness, Rowan grasps her hand. No, the soldiers killed every slave in Calcula. There are thousands of people enslaved there. The resolve in Rowan's countenance splintered. The only word she could breathe was Endovier. It was a fool's plea. Slowly, so slowly, Rowan shook his head. Once he got word of the uprising in Eelway, the king of Otterland sent 2 other legions north. None were spared in Endovier. So this is like what her checklist is: save the slaves in both of the slave camps and free Eelway. So like 2 of the things that she's been like has been keeping her like, okay, I can do this. I can do this for these people. I'm going to do this for these people. And that has now wiped. Like that is now no longer a thing. So of course she freaks out, but this is the first time something happens and she doesn't immediately go into an anger spiral. She goes into a more productive spiral. So she, of course, goes outside of the wards and she starts throwing her power at the wards. And instead of throwing it in the form of a weapon, she's like charging the wards pretty much. She's throwing her magic into them. And it pretty much describes it as gobbling up her power as if it needed more. Celaena did not utter a sound as she unleashed her magic on the barrier, a blast that shook the trees and set the earth rumbling. She fed her power into the invisible wall, begging the ancient stones to take it, to use it. The wards, as if sensing her intent, devoured her power whole, absorbing every last ember until it flickered, hungry for more. So she burned and burned and burned.
I don't think that I read that as the wards getting charged. It's she needed a safe way to release her power, and the wards absorb power as like a defense mechanism, but not that they were charging them or that she was trying to like put magic into them.
Every other time
I
she
can see
threw
where you
magic
get
at
that
it,
from the
it was a
language.
shield. Like it was protecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, originally when she goes out to like
don't
practice,
remember it being like it doesn't get mentioned later. Weird. Okay.
I don't know. In my mind, she charged them, and then once they like actually get into their fight, it's why she's able to like hold against these beings.
Like why they last so long?
Because like she charged up And you know how they like talk about like the well and like bringing it to the surface? Like
Yeah,
she
yeah,
brought a
yeah.
bunch to the surface. She's like, store this here, and then brings more to the surface. She like recharges and has more.
I definitely don't think that she's able to store the power in the wards to then take them back.
No. But
But I
they would
would
be
definitely be
stronger
like that the
because.
wards would possibly be stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a very different way than I read it.
Oh. Well.
The way the language is like I could but like now that you said it out loud, I was like, no, yeah, I could see how that language is different and that I don't know. That's
So
interesting.
pretty much that whole section is them preparing. She finds out this bad news, and then they're just preparing for
She just kind of like goes ballistic against
a
the
potential
wards.
attack.
Yeah. Back at the castle, in Otterlin, like all of the court has heard of this, and like Dorian freaks out and wants Sorsha to leave. Adian and Kaal are like Adian is like devastated because so many of his people were trapped there and they've all been killed and he couldn't do anything about it, feels he didn't do anything about it. Kaal like finds him and like tries to comfort him or like say what he can, and they just all feel shitty and terrified and so scared.
Mm-hmm. There is similar to in can't remember book 1 or book 2. I think it's 2. Yeah, in book 2, there's a similar act that happens. The Royal Theater, the night after all of the slaves were killed, puts on a show, and the musicians come out. The orchestra comes out, and they are in all wearing black, pretty much in mourning of what happened. And they only perform songs of their people. So they perform a song of Ilwe, a song of Fenharrow, a song of Missalan,
Millicent.
and Terrasin, each nation that had people in their labor camps. And finally, not for pomp or triumph, but to mourn what they had become, they played the song of Otterlin. The next morning, by royal decree, the theater was shut down. No one saw those musicians or their conductor again. So
I do like the snippets. They're like very random. There's like only one, but it was nice in the last book because it was to show that like it wasn't just their little pockets of rebellion, but that in some way that there is a public, like there's a more public people facing rebellion, and it's not just like these rival courts necessarily that are trying to fight back and forth, but that the people also feel that there is like horrible stuff happening right now and that they are also partaking in like their acts of defiance against the king. Mm-hmm. And I think I really like those snippets.
Yeah, I do too. I really enjoyed that kind of the one woman who kind of worked 10 years to be invited to the court,
it was like
just
an opera
to sing
singer or something. Before, like in the last book. Yeah,
just to sing in front of the king, and then she was immediately like beheaded.
Yeah.
And then same here. Like these people, they might yield to him right now, but you get this sense of like, oh, even the people in Otterlin, the people that work in the castle, like these people don't want to be under this rule anymore.
We flip back to Mistward to find out that reinforcements are in fact not coming. Mm-hmm. And she says, they didn't come 10 years ago. Why would they now?
Like, yeah,
Um,
I kind of
realize,
expected it, but you know, it's fine.
yeah, realizing that like they're not going to have as much protection as he thought, he like tries to get her to leave to like protect herself. And she's like, screw that, not happening. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no chance in hell. Do not insult me
I,
by asking me to leave.
yeah. And he doesn't, his only like argument back to that is like, your bloodline will be gone if you die. Like, if you die here, that like pretty much spells it for the rebellion completely, like realistically. Um, and she, I love the what she says back to him. She gritted her teeth. You have the experience. You are needed here. You are the only person who can give the Demi-Fae a chance of survival. You are trusted and respected, so I am staying because you are needed and because I will follow you to whatever end. It's
To
so
whatever
nice.
end. This is when he calls her Fireheart.
And he gives her daggers back. He gives her her daggers back. When she grasps the dagger, its weight lighter than she remembered, Rowan looked into her eyes, into the very core of her, and said, Fireheart. Yay! The Mistward, like, basically learns that reinforcements aren't coming, and no one flees. No one... They all, like, refuse to leave.
The only thing is they set up the healers in a manner, and then they have a group of people to get out, kind of like um people that aren't well, like, because they, I guess they have a like almost like hospital. They like pretty much like clear out those folks so that
Yeah.
they aren't in
They
the line
put
of
them...
danger.
They put them, like, deeper into the house, basically, or the fortress, to kind of keep them protected. And they wait because they think they have some more time to prepare. And they're basically awoken in the middle of the night. And she basically, like, wakes up to, like, Rowan, like, waking her up and being like, they're here, like, sooner
We
than
gotta
we
go.
thought. Like, we gotta go.
Yeah. This is the point, too, where we find out that Rowan actually did send word to the cadre. He said, I sent word to my cadre, as you like to call them, when, a few days ago, I don't know where they all are or whether they'll arrive in time. Maeve might not let them come, or some of them might not even ask her. They can be unpredictable, and it may be that I just get the order to return to Dornell, and you actually called for aid. I just said that I did. They're like internal dialogue. Some things are worth the risk.
So
Now we're fighting.
The soldiers have arrived, and like the first thing that is revealed is that their plan to get that one creature killed by the skinwalkers did not work, because there are 3 creatures that walk out of the like forest or whatever that's there.
And she notices,
and she recognizes the one that they thought that they had killed.
Yeah. They also find out now that they had someone inside feeding information to these.
Yeah.
The
They're
enemy,
pretty sure that they've
much.
been like betrayed. Because they had set up a bunch of traps, and they like make
Avoided
it around all of their traps without any problem whatsoever. Yeah. So they realize they've been betrayed. They have no idea how to kill the 3 creatures, and they're trying to figure out how to like fight against this. And Aelin,
they start striking the wards. Yeah, that's like the first thing that Narek does. He like throws a like shadow whip at the wards and it buzzes, like fizzes. And so I think this is where you're gonna say Aelin decides that the wards can't break. Like once they get inside, like
It's like super over
it's over.
if they get inside.
So she makes it her mission to go and fight these beings pretty much on her own. And she tells Rowan to stay and deal with the fact that because they had someone on the inside giving information and all of the wards were being like solidified to this one area because like it felt pressure there, a few thousand soldiers are just flowing in through their escape route.
Yeah, they like get let in. The soldiers get let in through the tunnel by someone. She realizes that she's the only one really that can keep the three of them in the front at bay because of her fire specifically. Like they are afraid of her fire. It's the only thing that they've ever been like susceptible to. So she basically tells Rowan like, I'm going to go out and defend the wards. And Rowan's like, you can't do that without going outside the wards. Do not do that. Do not go outside the wards. And she's like, there's like, this is when they like break in from below. And Rowan's like, shit. And she's like, you have to go deal with that. You have to go protect the people that are the more vulnerable of us that are now like the most defenseless and are basically all in the front line because they've been let in through the tunnels. And she has to go out and try to hold the line. And Rowan like begs her not to engage the like three creatures and to just like hold the line and not let them pass because he's hoping that like his cadre will come and help or that someone will be there to help.
Or
And
they
she's
can
like,
wipe the soldiers internally first and he'll be there to help.
And then he'll be able to come back out and help. And she's like, yeah, sure, bud. I'll get right on that. I will definitely stand outside and not engage anyone.
Yeah, I'll just stand here and look pretty with my fire.
Yep.
So she makes a pretty much like wall of fire just outside the wards. So we have the wards, and then she creates another wall just in front of it of fire to fight off the darkness that is trying to press against the wards. Every second that it is hit, the flame kind of goes right back in that spot. She's healing these spots over and over. So she's constantly using her power and like pulling from her power during this because they're trying to poke because they know that the three of them can probably outpower her or out magic her, I guess. Because they are very strong. She, at some point, of course, takes her sword out because
she pulls out Goldrin.
She's not gonna just sit there and let them go through. She's like, well, we gotta take them out because I'm starting to feel this power kind of dwindle, so I gotta use my other tools currently.
And they do not like Goldrin. They like are they have a like physical reaction to Goldrin and they start talking to her. They say, you're not Anthro, beloved of the Dark Queen, and you're not Brandon of the Wildfire. And she's like, how do they know who that is? And she realizes that it's because these three creatures are Volg. So this is where we learn that they are three princes of the other realm that the Volg come from, and that the king of Otterlin has somehow been able to like give them these bodies to inhabit and bring these Volg princes into our realm through whatever terrifying, scary shit he's doing in the mountains or wherever he's doing it now, because he keeps moving people all over the place. But that's like, we now know enough about the Volg princes to be like, oh, that's real bad, because the Volg princes are extremely powerful and terrifying, and there's three of them standing outside of this castle with just Aelin standing in front of it being like, I'll have all we've got. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna be
They're
here.
no they're no longer creatures that he's made. They are three beings that are very powerful that he brought specifically here and was
And
like,
they're just using those bodies as like hosts.
yeah.
It's horrifying. So like that's basically what all like the testing was, is like trying to find like host bodies that were strong enough to hold the
More
Vald
Vald.
princes.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying. And she's out there doing her best to like keep the fortress like safe, and she can like hear everything basically that's like going on, and she's the longer that she can hear things, the happier that she is, because she realizes that like the battle's not lost and that they're still fighting and that they're having some success because everyone's still alive.
Yeah. Or at
Um
least there's not like screeches of death and what you would assume. She does clap back at them, which I thought was nice, but it also gives you a little bit of lore in that is um she sent a wall of flames searing at them. Brannon and the others beat you into oblivion once, she said. Though her lungs were burning, we can do it again. Low laughter. We were not beaten, only contained. Only until a mortal man was foolish enough to invite us back in. Oh, God.
idiot.
But
Idiots.
you realize that they also have these, we get the information of they also have these like black necklaces on.
Yeah, so they do have necklaces on, and she does make a comment. If she cut off their heads, that torque of wordstone, would the creatures vanish or be unleashed in another form? This was
Mm-hmm.
far, far worse than she had expected. Like, they really don't know anything about them, which is the
Yep.
most terrifying because she doesn't really know this safe way to deal with them, if she even knew a way to deal with them in the first place.
The only thing she knows is that, well, they gave her this information was that the two people of like fire bloodline are the only two people that were able to contain them in some
Yeah.
manner. And
Yep.
she is of fire bloodline, so she knows that her power can do something against them. She just doesn't know to what extent. If they
Yeah.
can actually kill them, or if it will, like you said, just kill the host body, and then what happens next?
So she's losing strength. She's still got the wards up. She's protecting them the best she can. But she is
Pretty much
starting
this whole
to.
time, they're just putting their energy into her, and they're no longer really focusing on the wards. They're just focusing on
Yeah.
her at this point.
Um, she sees the cadre arrive. They make it, and they like kind of. They all like. She opens the wards enough that they can make it through, and like they all spent through, like basically not hesitating, except for one, the same
Kitty
guy that
cat.
she had met once already, Kitty, kitty cat. Um, and he's the only one that kind of stops and like looks to see if she's okay. And then she basically is like, he's inside, like help him, and like begs him to go. And he goes and then closes like the wards behind them. This is basically right when she starts to like fall. Like she
Yeah,
cannot
she's coughing
protect
up
herself
blood. Her
anymore.
nose is bleeding. There's like a lot. You can tell she's not having a good time.
Yeah. It like flips really briefly to like Rowan inside and the cadre going to find him, and he like is initially like happy to see them, and then immediately is like, they've been outside, they've seen her, like, and asks how she's doing and where she is, thinking that like maybe she came with them. And
This is also when we learned that Baz was the scout leader was the person that gave them the information of
yeah.
where the traps were, where their weakest point would be, and all of that. And if I'm remembering correctly, Baz is the one that Luca was either really good friends with or cozied up to, had a relationship with. And so um Rowan makes a notice that He knew that Baz had already met his end, but he hoped that Luca hadn't been the one to do it. Because he pretty much finds out because Luca's fighting there. And he gets that information. And of course, all of the cadre come inside and they run up to him and just go right into line. They just immediately start fighting. They just kind of look at each other and they're like, all right, we got this. This is what we're good at. This is what we do. We're just going to keep doing this. Gavriel and Rowan kind of have a brief talk. Where is she? Gavriel held out an arm as if to stop him. She's in bad shape, Rowan, I think. And then Rowan ran. He just ran to her. Because he knew if Gavriel is saying she's in bad shape, that's probably really, really bad.
Yeah. And he makes it outside just to see the Vogue, like, take her, basically.
Yeah.
The creature took Aylin's face in its hands. Her sword thudded to the ground, forgotten. Rowan was screaming as the creature pulled her into its arms as she stopped fighting, as her flames winked out and the darkness swallowed her whole. So, now we just get, like, the biggest dump of backstory I have ever experienced in a book, period. The Vogue, as we've we've seen happen before, they make you relive the darkest shit that has ever happened in your life. So we finally get the like full description basically of like how her parents died and what happened. It takes her through like her like being in the room with her dead parents, going through like Nehemiah's death.
Brings her back to
her
Endovir and being whipped.
Yep. It just takes her through all of the worst shit that she's experienced in her life and makes her relive it over and over and over again. And then manipulates it like as well and makes it worse. like the Nehemiah like calling her a coward over and over again, telling her to look at her. It manipulates her memories basically that she ends up being like whipped by Nehemiah, by Sam, by all of the other people that she feels she's wronged. And then is like so traumatized and in such a dark place within like the Vogue's clutches that like she ends up begging for them to be whipping her. And the Vogue princes are just like feeding off of her like crazy because it's just she is the most tasty meal of depression and trauma that they could possibly get their hands on. And the only reason that they like stop in the least is because they're told to. Like they just
Narek like, pretty much says that you can't
take sips.
Kill her. Yeah, just
because
sips. Little at a time.
Like the king wants her alive. So like they're not allowed to kill her. They are going to take them with her. Going to take her with them. And they're told like just sips. And even in just these sips, we go through the chapter of
we learn that she's met the King of Otterland previously. We knew vaguely that she had met the King of Otterland before.
Yeah.
Because we knew that she had met Dorian. Yeah. But it never touched on how she met Dorian or why she met Dorian. We go into the full deep dive of the night before her parents' murder. And
it's when the king is visiting.
Yeah. So the King of Otterland visits Terrasen and is in their mountain home. And during this time, she notices that Dorian is kind of standoffish and quiet and sits by himself, and his dad never pays attention to him, and she feels sorry for him, even as a kid. So she like olive branches out to him and talks to him, communicates, and as she's talking to him, she starts feeling unwell and she doesn't really know why. And we learn that it's because the King of Otterlin is trying to worm his way into her brain.
She gets a
And
headache.
yeah, she
A
starts
really
getting a
horrible headache.
Yep. She starts getting a headache and she describes it as, like, when her parents say, like, what's wrong, she says, get it out, get it out, get it out. And it's described as a worm just trying to make it in, like a dark worm trying to make it into her, like, brain. And she's like, no, get it out. I will stop it. It can't take my brain. It'll latch on forever. Like, it will stay here for good.
The only thing that like puts her out is like similar to the, so she like, they think that she's having another like episode where like she's burning up inside and like unable to control her power, but it's really the King of Otterlin like doing this to her, and she's having this reaction and she can't communicate it to them. And similar to the way that like Rowan can like suffocate her power, her mother has like a drop of water affinity and she basically drowns her daughter like from the inside out to get her to stop.
Yeah.
And to what she thinks is like protect her, to like make sure that the fire isn't going to burn her out. And she only at the end it says the King of Otterlin looked at her for a third time and smiled. She had never like made the connection before now, pretty much.
Yeah.
Before this is happening, that the King of Otterlin was the one to do that, and that like none of them knew that he had magic.
And they
assumed that it was Maeve.
She also puts together that like this is how he's getting these things. Like this is how he worms into their brain and latches on and then controls them. Because even she says the worm would latch into her mind and never let go. Like that is very solidified in her thought process of fighting against whatever this is, even as a kid. So she knows, and yeah, we learned that it was the king doing it, which piece of shit.
Terrifying. So she, we also learn about the Amulet of Orinth in this. And we learn about Lady Marian, who is her mother's lady in waiting and basically was like one of the women that helped take care of Aelin. And Lady Marian like spent a lot of time with Aelin, and was basically just like the other one of her like main caretakers.
So she gets the Amulet of Orinth.
Her mother gives it to her.
And pretty much just a few hours after she's given this, a unnatural storm of darkness rolls in. So first they relocate. Her mother and father and Marian move to their like summer home to get away from everything, to like see if it'll calm down. Like her magic is flaring up, Maeve is pushing in or something like that.
Yeah.
So they relocate. This then puts, it kind of alienates them from their like protection, pretty much. Like their home was way more protected than their summer home. Her uncle's not there, her cousin, like all of the people that would protect them in a general, like in any scenario, isn't with them. It's just the four of them. Pretty much this darkness comes through, and the first thing that she remembers is she goes into her parents' room. She closes the window because it's raining, and she believes that the bed is wet because it's raining, and so she closes the window, and she was confused as to why they didn't stir when she climbed in the bed, because they usually do, and they like pull her in and whatever, but she didn't think anything of it and went to sleep. She doesn't know anything's wrong until Lady Marian comes into the room and like pulls her out of the bed and like brings her away to like clean her up.
Yeah.
And whatever. There were a few remaining servants shouting to the empty house that King Orlin was dead too, murdered in his bed, just like, and of course Lady Marian is like shut the fuck up. Hello? There is a
Mhm.
child right here whose parents, she was in their bed and are dead. Like, maybe we don't come screaming into the room that everyone's dead
Yeah.
while there's a child here. She realizes then that her family is dead. And Lady Marian pretty much says, like, I will protect you. Like, we're gonna get through this. Like, this will be fine. Of course, that next night, they send word out, whoever was left, to try to get reinforcements to bring them back. With protection, like a caravan or something to like bring them back to the castle. Of course, the king, or we assume it's the king of Otterland, comes back, or something comes back with this like dark
The
magic.
darkness comes back.
Yeah. Before, obviously, they're able to get word back to the kingdom or to Terrasen to then come and save them. Marian, pretty much like the most heart-wrenching scene, in my opinion. This is the woman that was brought up early on that we didn't really have information about. We just knew that there was another woman figure in her life that was very important to her.
Yeah.
The front, because the kitchen light might suggest to whoever it was that someone was inside, the front was better for sneaking in to finish what had begun the night before. Aelin, Marian whispered. Aelin listened to me. Though Marian was breathing quickly, her voice was even. You are going to run for the river. Do you remember the way to the footbridge? She nodded. Good girl. Make for the bridge and cross it. Do you remember the empty farm down the road? Find a place to hide there and do not come out. Do not let yourself be seen by anyone except someone you recognize. Do not even if they say they're a friend. Wait for the court. They will find you. Marian gripped her shoulders. I am going to buy you what time I can, Aelin. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, don't look back. And don't stop until you find a place to hide. She shook her head, silent tears finding their way out at last. The front door groaned, a quick movement. Lady Marian reached for the dagger in her boot. It glinted in the dim light. When I say run, you run, Aelin. Do you understand? She didn't want to, not at all, but she nodded. Lady Marian brushed a kiss to her brow. Tell Alid, her voice broke. Tell my Alid that I love her very much. Run now. And of course, she runs. And the first thing she hears, you will not find her. And she immediately protects the exit. And unfortunately, she witnesses the figure grabbing Marian and slamming her against the table and breaking her neck, pretty much, is how it's described. This is the first time she says, or doesn't say, but internally she's thinking, a sacrifice. It had been a sacrifice, and now it would be in vain. More than death, that was what she hated most, the wasted sacrifice of Lady Marian. She clawed at the ground and yanked at the roots, and then, tiny eyes in the dark, small figures at the roots, heaving them up, her foot slipped free. The little folk who had already vanished, unable to do anything but run. Kind of brings us back to the little folk that saw her when she was coming to Wendelin and Mistward. I like that they added that in.
Yeah, so Lady Marian helps her, the little folk help her, and this is like when she ends up in the river. So this is like her full origin story. She keeps running, she ends up in the river, and that river is where like Arabin will eventually find her, and she has the amulet of Orinth with her when she goes into the river, and she assumes that she lost the amulet in the river. this moment is the one that she says had broken everything Aelin Galathinius was and had promised to be. She, lying on the ground on the bottom of the world, on the bottom of hell, that was the moment she could not face, had not faced, for even then she had known the enormity of that sacrifice. She did not know how long she laid on the bottom of wherever she was, but eventually the Vogue Princess started up again, barely more than shadows of thought and malice as they stalked from memory to memory as if sampling platters at a feast. Little bites, sips. They did not even look her way, for they had won, and she was glad of it. Let them do what they wanted. Let Narok take her back to Otterlin and throw her at the king's feet. There was a scrape and crunch of shoes, then a small, smooth hand slid toward her. But it was not Kaal or Sam or Nehemia who lay across from her, watching her with those sad turquoise eyes. Her cheek against the moss, the young princess she had been, Aelin Galathinius, reached a hand for her. Get up, she said softly. Celaena shook her head. Aelin strained for her, bridging that rift in the foundation of the world. Get up. A promise for a better life, a better world. The Vogue Princess paused. She had wasted her life, wasted Marion's sacrifice. Those slaves had been butchered because she had failed, because she had not been there in time. She had not been there in time. Get up, said someone beyond the young princess. Sam. Sam standing just beyond where she could see, smiling faintly. Get up, said another voice, a woman's, Nehemia. Get up. Two voices together, her mother and father, faces grave but eyes bright. Her uncle was beside them, the crown of Terrasen on his silver hair. Get up, he told her gently. One by one, like shadows emerging from the mist, they appeared, the faces of people she had loved with her heart of wildfire. And then there was Lady Marian, smiling beside her husband. Get up, she whispered, her full voice of that hope for the world. Her voice full of that hope for the world, and for her daughter she would never see again.
A tremor in the darkness. Aelin still lay before her, hand still reaching. The Vogue Princess turned. As the demon princess moved, her mother stepped toward her, face and hair and build so like her own. And if we go back into the Vogue are like taking over the memory again. And in this, her mother calls her a disappointment. You're everything I hated about the world, her father says. Traitor, murderer, liar, thief, coward. Again and again, worming in just like the king of Otterlin's power had wriggled into her mind like a maggot. The king hadn't done it merely to cause a disruption and hurt her. He had also done it to separate her family, to get them out of the castle, to take the blame away from Otterlin, and to make it look like an outside attack. She had blamed herself for dragging them to the manor to be butchered, but the king had planned it all, every minute, every detail, except for the mistake of leaving her alive. Perhaps because the power of the amulet did indeed save her. Come with us, her family whispered. Come with us into the ageless dark. This is the point where she realizes that there was some pushback once Aelin arrived in this thought, and that the Vogue are kind of not, they're kind of being hindered by positive thoughts that are seeping in. The earth on which her kingdom lay, green and mountainous, and as unyielding as its people, her people. She could see the snow-capped staghorns, the wild tangle of Oakwald at their feet, and Corinth, the city of light and learning, once a pillar of strength, and her home. The part that I have highlighted for this is, it would not take a monster to destroy a monster, but light to drive out darkness. She was not afraid. She would remake the world, remake it for them. Those she had loved, with the glorious burning heart, a world so brilliant and prosperous that when she saw them again in the afterworld, she would not be ashamed. She was their queen, and she could offer them nothing less. Aelin Galathinius smiled at her, hands still outreached. Get up, the princess said. Celaena reached across the earth between them, brushed her fingers against Aelin, and arose.
So
Pretty much at this point, Rowan is being held back by
Gabriel.
Gavriel. Every time I see that name, my brain messes it up. Um, Gavriel and Lorcan are pretty much holding him back
From
because,
like going out there.
Yeah, he wants to push right into the darkness, and they're like, "No, you idiot! You will also just be swallowed up whole." Like,
and they're like trying to convince him that like she's dead, like it's not worth it to go out there. She's already dead. You can't save her.
He's like, there's no way because I can feel her still.
Yeah.
Which you're like, bond. Or I'm like, bond. More bond. They're
bonded.
Bonded.
And then a rumbling shook the earth and they froze. Beneath them, some huge power was surging, a behemoth rising from the deep. They turned towards the darkness, and Rowan could have sworn that a golden light arced through it and then disappeared. That's impossible. She burned out. No, she didn't! Because she's so freaking powerful and so strong. She faces the thing that she is most afraid of and most ashamed of and pushes past it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vogue princes are like, that's not how that's supposed to work.
Mm-hmm. You're supposed to give up. And your sadness is supposed to feed us more.
As she breathed fire into their cores, flames shot out of their ears, their fingers. The two creatures didn't have a chance to scream as she burned them to cinders. So she kills the first two Vogue by herself.
Mm-hmm.
She kills the first two Vogue by herself. And then Rowan, like, realizes she has no power left after she kills those two.
Yeah.
And then races to her and, drawing his dagger, slits his hand open because they both realize that they're Karanan and that they have that bond, and they choose to, like, do that together and share their power. She knew he could read the words on her face. She said, to whatever end. He nodded, and she joined hands with him, blood to blood and soul to soul, his other arm coming around to grip her tightly, their hands clasped between them. He whispered into her ear, I claim you too, Aelin Galathinius. It's so nice.
And of course the princes try to make a final stand and don't realize that she now is juiced again.
She's got so much power because he's got so much power.
He's really strong, as we've learned from their interactions. Like, Celaena at so many points were like, oh my god, he's so strong. Oh my god, he has so much power. Oh my god, I can't believe he can do that. Oh, he just sucked the air out of my lungs like it was nothing. Yep. And then I can't believe he froze this whole pond. Like, yeah, he's strong as fuck.
So powerful. And now she has access to all of his power.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this like rolling black wave of magic coming towards them from the Vogue princes. And the two of them, just obliterate it with like golden light.
Rowan's magic punched into her, old and strange, and so fast her knees buckle. He held her with that unrelenting strength, and she harnessed his wild power as he opened his innermost barriers, letting it flow through her. The black wave was not halfway fallen when they shattered it apart with golden light, leaving Narek and his remaining prince gaping. She did not give them a moment to spool the darkness back. Narek and the prince were shrieking. The Vogue did not want to go back. They did not want to be ended, not after so long spent waiting for return to her world, but she crammed the light down their throats, burning up their black blood. She clung to Rowan, gritting her teeth against the sound. There is one thing, because she goes like head to head with Narek, you get a glimpse because he's not a Vogue prince. He is a magical being from Otterlin who has been manipulated to be what he is currently. She clung to Rowan, gritting her teeth against the sounds. There was a sudden silence, and she looked to Narok, standing so still, watching, waiting. A spear of black punched into her head, offering one more vision in a mere heartbeat. Not a memory, but a glimpse of the future. The sounds and smell and look of it were so real that only her grip on Rowan kept her anchored to the world. Then it was gone, and the light was still building, enveloping them all. The light became unbearable as she willed it into the two Vogue who had now dropped to their knees, pouring it into every shadowy corner of them, and she could have sworn that the blackness in Narok's eyes faded. Could have sworn that his eyes became a mortal brown, and that gratitude flickered just for a moment. Just for a moment, then she burned both the demon and Narok to ash. The remaining Vogue prince crawled only 2 steps before he followed suit, a silent scream on his perfect face as he was incinerated. When the light and flames receded, all that remained of Narok and the Vogue were 4 wordstone collars steaming in the wet grass. This plays back to the same being. Like, she knew it was the same type of being from the library, because in that last moment before she beheaded that last one, the same kind of description happens. It's like they stop being what they are and they're just human again. Like, they're just mortal
like
again.
Right before they
and they're like,
die.
please just end this for me.
Her mark also glows like while this is happening, like the mark of Brannon glows again, which is like, it seems to only happen when she like has these huge outbursts of fire, or like maybe like just digs into that well enough, maybe, which is kind of cool. And now they're carrying on, and I just such a nice like wrap up to that chapter and that fight.
Yeah. We go back to Otterlin, and we meet back up with Kale and Dorian and Sorsha. This whole section is Kale still wants to see if his theory is correct on the 3 towers of how it's working. So the king, in his mind, is putting power into the wordstone that is at Rifthold, and it's kind of just shooting power to the other ones, and then just making this like death triangle of his power. And it's just feeding off of the like obsidian rock that's in this area.
His theory is very good. He basically gets Dorian to use his magic to like, he's like, all right, so here's the thing, like, take your magic and like funnel them into these 3 towers to see if this theory like works.
To see if the thing in the middle will freeze.
To
or
like,
there's like a cup in the middle.
Freeze. So it'll like make the power like
Blanket
stay over
hole.
that area.
Yeah.
And like it ends up working, and that cup like freezes, and then one of the towers gets knocked over, and all of it goes away. Like it all stops.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're thinking like, okay,
we destroy
so
one
if
tower.
we take out one of the towers, then like maybe magic will return. We don't have to like do this crazy huge thing of like killing the king or like figuring out like how to get this done. Like we might have a viable solution to like bringing magic back across like the whole kingdom. Good job, Kale. Smart. Well done.
You did it. This is also, I highlighted one thing Kale says to Sorsha that I think is lovely. In passing, I think Kale said, and Sorsha turned, brows high, ready to get to work. I think he said again, smiling faintly, that this kingdom could use a healer as its queen.
It is a very nice gesture, because like Kale sees like how happy Dorian is with Sorsha and how she is a very good person. She's very sweet. She cares about like the people and not just like her own ambition, and she's a healer. Sorsha gets a little freaked out by it, but I still think that it was very sweet. And then, like, towards the end of that chapter, too, like, Dorian, like, at the end of their conversation, he basically is like, I think that this is a good change. Don't fear it. And Kael basically thinks when Dorian had spoken and hadn't been a prince who looked at him, it had been a king. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yay! More character growth for Dorian. So we get that quick snippet of like what's happening in Otterland. Huge revelation in that they think that they can take out like this spell by taking out a tower. And then we go back to Mistward, where Celaena has been sleeping for 2 days because she's tired, because she kind of did a whole lot.
After she comes to and like the cavalry or cadre, they're leaving.
Yeah, the cadre are basically like, all right, bye.
We did the thing.
Report. We have to go report to Maeve now.
So they go back and they report, obviously, to Maeve while this is happening. Rowan knows this is going to happen, so he's like, well, I guess it's time. We're going to Dornell. In this same time, she recalls the memory that was brought up when she was in the darkness about the amulet. And she now knows that it was the third word key. And then that was how Terrasen was so powerful. Not necessarily powerful like the King of Otterland, because he's using that power for bad, but Terrasen would use it to protect their people, not to, like, create war. This is also where she realizes that, like, I wouldn't have survived if the amulet fell off into the water.
Yep.
So the next person who finds her is
who must have it.
And so she's no. He definitely has that. He probably has no idea what it is.
Shit. I don't know. Erebin's pretty fucking crafty. He might know what it is.
I mean, she doesn't know if he knows what it is pretty much where at. She just knows she has to get it back from him now.
True.
Like, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because if the king finds out that Celaena is Aelin, and he puts 2 and 2 together, that she could possibly have the word key, who else was in that? He knows about Erebin. He knows that she was Otterland's assassin. He knows, like, all of her background, pretty much. All of her Rifthold background, at least.
Yeah. She, like, realizes all of this stuff, and Rowan kind of notices her wheels turning and is like, what is it? Like, what's going on? And she's like, I know what the third word key is and where it is. And he's like, tell me. She goes, nope, not while you're bound to her. And he's like, oh, shit, that's a good point. Actually, you're right. Don't tell me anything.
Keep that to yourself.
You go ahead and keep that one to yourself. Don't tell me any of it. Yeah, this is when they, like, decide to go back to the kingdom. Before they do that, this is one of my favorite lines in the book.
Is it 490? Because same.
No, it's 488. It's before that.
Okay.
It's before it.
Yeah, I don't have anything highlighted. So go.
She says it's the truth of her, undiluted and complete, and after all they had been through, all that she still wanted to do. So she steeled herself. I have never told anyone this story. No one in the world knows, but it's mine, she said, blinking past the burning in her eyes, and it's time for me to tell it. Rowan leaned back on the rock, bracing his palms behind him. Once upon a time, she said to him, to the world, to herself, in a land long since burned to ash, there lived a young princess who loved her kingdom very much. And she told him of the princess whose heart had burned with wildfire, of the mighty kingdom in the north, of its downfall, and of the sacrifice of Lady Marian. It was a long story, and sometimes she grew quiet and cried, and during those times he leaned over her to wipe away her tears. When she finished, Rowan merely passed her more of the tonic. She smiled at him, and he looked at her for a while before he smiled back, a different smile than all the others he'd given her before. And she, like, tells him basically everything that had happened that she had relived with the Vogue, but, like, had never told anyone before it. I just love there lived a young princess who loved her kingdom very much. It's so cute. Sarah's writing just gets me. I'm still so frustrated that, like, she's so young when she writes this.
Yep.
Ugh!
So good.
She's so good.
So
Once upon a time.
at this time,
So cute.
Aelin is working and getting her, like, she's healing after just expending all of her power, pretty much.
Healing up before we go to Doranel and face Maeve.
They're about to travel to Dornell, and she has a last, like, conversation with Emrys, and this one got me in the heartstrings a little. She said, "It might take a while, but when I reclaim my kingdom, the Demi-Fae will always have a home there, and you two and Malachi will have a place in my household, should you wish it, as my friends." Emrys' eyes were gleaming as he nodded, gripping Luca's hand. The young man, who had opted to keep a long, wicked scratch bestowed in battle down his face, merely stared at her, wide-eyed. A part of her heart ached at the shadows that now lay in his face. Base's betrayal would haunt him, she knew, but Celaena smiled at him, ruffled his hair, and made to turn away. "Your mother would have been proud," Emrys said. Celaena put a hand on her heart and bowed in thanks. Rowan cleared his throat, and Celaena gave them one last parting smile before she followed the prince into the trees, to Doranel, and to Maeve at last. I love this so much.
She always does this, where she, like, wraps up with a nice, cute thing that makes your heart happy, and then sends you into, like, the last 100 pages of, like, alright, now I'm gonna beat the shit out of your heart. Have fun. See ya later.
Here's this really cute thing.
Here's this really cute thing where everything was heartwarming and nice. Could have ended the book there. Could have started up on the next book. Okay? And we just read all this next stuff, but in the next book. And to how exciting that beginning of that book would be. So they basically, like, before we get to Doranel, we get another snippet of what's going on in Otterlin, and it's revealed that Aelin is alive. Cat's out of the bag. Okay, girl with a bunch of fucking fire magic does some crazy shit in Mistward,
and wiped out the entire
people
Legion.
are gonna find out about it. Okay, it's gonna be pretty obvious. So, like, everyone, like, the word is getting back now that, like, Aelin's alive. She took a stand at Mistward. They all think that she's been hiding in Doranel this whole time. So, like, they still have not made the connection that, like, Aelin and Celaena are the same person. Adian knows better because, like, Adian knows that those two families, like, have been, like, fighting for, or not fighting, but, like, having this secret struggle forever. So, like, people who are going to be close, like, really close to Aelin are going to know that that's bullshit. But the general public and, like, enough of, they're gonna still be able to fool people into, like, thinking that Celaena and Aelin are, like, different people. Like, no one's gonna be the wiser. And especially the king, like, would have no idea that, like, Maeve and her family were, like, having this, like, secret struggle back and forth, and that they would never want her to be in Doranel. And that's, like, not where she would be hiding out at all. So they tell her, Murtaugh comes back and, like, tells Ren and all of them that she's alive and that she took this stand, and then they send out, like, all of these riders, basically, like, to say, like, it's real, she's alive, she's here, and she's, like, in Mistward and in Doranel.
This feels like also the first time Kale actually, like, maybe the second time. I would say the first is him telling Sorsha that, like, we deserve a queen
we would deserve a queen
that's
like
better,
you. Yeah.
or you would be a better fitting queen than what we currently have.
Well, it's not, to be fair.
He
It's low
also,
bar.
yeah, he also makes sure, like, very, like, importantly calls out Eelway. Eelway, Kale, breathe. Send word to Eelway. Tell them to hold on. Tell them to prepare. Perhaps it was the light. Perhaps it was the cold. But Adian could have sworn there were tears in the captain's eyes as he said, "Tell them it's time to fight back." And you're like, Kale, okay, let's go.
Are we
Finally?
a rebel now? Are we, is this you choosing a side? Yeah, I'd like to think that that's him choosing his side. He's in now. He's invested. He chooses her. They're now like, okay, we're in prep mode. We are preparing. And then like we get a snippet too of like Dorian in the throne room when his father is like raging and he's just like, this is it. This is like the last time that I'm gonna have to like do this duplicitous crap and like listen to his bullshit, because like Celaena's gonna come back as Aelin and then we are going to change the world. And then we flip back to Aelin and Rowan getting to Doranel. Or like on their way to Doranel. The entire time that they're on their way to Doranel, Rowan is trying to distance himself from Celaena and like giving her the cold shoulder and trying to like, I don't know, make it less painful when they get back and it becomes obvious that like she has to leave and he's going to have to stay. It's like, okay, Rowan, you're being a butt, but I guess you're trying to protect yourself. Aelin is like, Maeve might be a queen, but so am I. I'm not gonna bow to anyone. So she's kind of like hyping herself up, like getting herself in the mental space to like go and deal with her. And I love just the comparison of like what she's doing now and how she's preparing and the way that she's talking about herself and about talking to go and meet Maeve compared to like the beginning of the book when her first encounter of Maeve, she's like so scared she could piss herself. Like she's like just absolutely terrified talking to Maeve and having to deal with Maeve. And now she's like, I am the heir of ash and fire and I will bow to nobody. And I'm just like, yes, finally, like please. You are so powerful and so great. Good. So they make it to the throne room. They do their introductions and Celaena's like, all right, are you a woman of your word? It is time you answer my questions. I have done what you have asked. And now it's time for lore. So she asks about the word keys, about how they can be destroyed. She says that they cannot be destroyed. They can only be put back in the gate. And asks how they could get put back in the gate. And she's like, do you think they would already have been restored to their home if anyone knew how to do that? Like, if we knew, this wouldn't be an issue. We would have done it already.
Be here, you and I.
And she basically, they ask, like, what they look like. She's just trying to get as much information about the word keys as possible. And Maeve is like, here's basically all of the stuff you kind of already knew. And that's all I can remember. And Celaena's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Bullshit.
Like, what? And Maeve was like, I told you I'd tell you what I knew. I just didn't tell you how much I knew that you might have already known. So, like, she realizes that she's definitely, like, been tricked a little bit. So she changes her tack and asks about, like, more information about the Vogue princes and, like, how can they be killed and how, like, how powerful they are. And one of the things she says is there aren't many princes, but I once witnessed an entire legion of Fey warriors devoured by 6 of them within hours. And a chill went down her spine, and even the wolves' hackles rose. but I killed them with my fire and light. How do you think Brannon won himself such glory and a kingdom? He was a discarded son of nobody, unclaimed by either parent, but Mala loved him fiercely. So his flames were sometimes all that held the Vogue princes at bay until we could summon a force to push them back. Brannon wasn't royal born. Maeve cocked her head. Didn't anyone ever tell you what the mark on your brow meant? I was told it was a sacred mark. Maeve's eyes danced with amusement. Sacred only because of the bearer who established your kingdom. But before that, it was nothing. Brannon was born with the bastard's mark, the mark every unclaimed, unwanted child possessed, marking them as nameless, nobody. Each of Brannon's heirs, despite their long lineage, has been graced with it, the nameless mark. So she learns that Brannon was a bastard, like not royal in any way, and he became royal and became like this noble person because Mala was basically like he was chosen by Mala and given like some of her fire. And that's like how that whole line started. So the mark, although like now it's considered like a noble and like powerful mark, it's this old mark of like a bastard line of like nameless children. Just like kind of so sad.
Yep.
And that's also like where she gets her fire.
She wonders why it burns only in the presence of certain beings. So it burned in front of the King of Otterlin, which is terrifying to her because now she thinks he knows who she is and maybe always knew, but didn't know if she knew who she was, or maybe he was hoping, okay, if she's my champion, I can capture her, and then what I tried to do to her as a kid, I can do to her with more power, and I can take her adult power instead. Why did it glow? What'd you say?
You mean the king?
Yeah, the King of Otterlin.
The king, yeah.
The king knew or saw it. It glowed in front of the king. Why did it glow when I dueled Cain and when I faced the Vogue princes? She knew Maeve was well informed about the shadow creature that had lived inside Cain. Perhaps not a Vogue prince, but something small enough to be contained by the wordstone ring he'd worn instead of a collar. It had recognized Celaena, and it had said to both of them, "You were brought here, all of you were, all the players in the unfinished game." Perhaps your blood merely recognized the presence of the Vogue and was trying to tell you something. Perhaps it meant nothing.
So she thinks that it glows in front of Vogue Princess because it was in front of Cain.
Mm-hmm. Anything that is of like Vogue creation, maybe. Anything that has to do with maybe the wordstone, because he was wearing one. Cain was wearing one. All the Vogue princes had the like collars on.
Yeah.
She doesn't really give her any information, but it obviously makes us question it a little bit more of like, why did it flash at this point? And maybe it was something in her lineage protecting her.
Yeah.
Against these things. Against these like things that are being controlled by a wordstone, word key.
Word marks? I don't know. By the twerks. I don't know what it is anymore at this point.
At this point,
it's got to be the collars.
Also, yeah. At this point, Maeve also admits that, pretty much admits what Celaena is feeling, or Aelin is feeling already. The King of Otterlin, it seems, is doing what I never had the nerve to do while the keys were briefly in my possession. Without all 3 keys, he is limited. He can only open the portal between our worlds for short periods, long enough to let in perhaps one prince to infiltrate a body he has prepared. But with all 3 keys, he could open the portal at will. He could summon all the Volg armies to be led by the princes in their mortal bodies, and Maeve looked more intrigued than horrified. And with all 3 keys, he might not need to rely on magic. He might not need to rely on magically gifted hosts for the Volg. There are countless lesser spirits amongst the Volg hungry for entrance to this world.
So basically, if he gets the 3rd key, we're super fucked.
Mm-hmm. All of the gates are open and every portal is open and all bad is gonna come here.
Yep. And guess who wants to know where the 3rd key is? Because she suspects that Aelin knows where it is. Spoiler!
Maeve.
It's Maeve! It's fucking Maeve. She compels Rowan to tell her. She compels Rowan to tell her everything that Rowan knows about where the key could be. And thank God she was smart.
She said,
and didn't
no.
tell him shit. Because
no, I'm not gonna tell you.
He's still bloodsworn to her. So she said he basically tells her everything. Like, she found a riddle. She knows the King of Ireland has the first one, doesn't know where it is. She learned what Brandon did with the 3rd one and where it is, but she refused to tell me. And Maeve is like, you're keeping secrets from your aunt, Aelin? I'm so hurt. Come on. And she's like, I will never tell you where it is. And she's like, cool.
That's the case.
What if I whip Rowan in front of you until you tell me where it is? And it really does almost break her. But she has a trick up her sleeve. She basically, like, she explodes. She had been digging into her power, like, basically the entire time that they've been on their way to Doranel. And it says, Celaena set the world on fire. She lets out this crazy, like, it spans, like, all of the city. And it makes it look like everything's on fire. But the fire doesn't, like, hurt or burn people or harm them. She just shows the expanse of how bad and how large it can get, so that Maeve really understands, if I want to burn this whole place to the ground, I can.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
this
will.
is how large of a area I will do it with. And she's like, well, it's fine, because my whole kingdom is made of stone. And Celaena's like, your people aren't. I will burn your people to the ground.
Maeve's nostrils flared delicately. You would murder innocents, Aelin? Perhaps. You did it for years, didn't you? Celaena's smile didn't falter. Try me. Just try to push me, Aunt, and see what comes of it. This was what you wanted, wasn't it? Not for me to master my magic, but for you to learn just how powerful I am. Not how much of your sister's blood flows in my veins. No. You've known from the start that I have very little of Mob's power. You wanted to know how much I got from Brandon. You never gave the keys to Brandon, and you didn't journey with Brandon or Athriel to retrieve the keys from the Volg. You went to steal them for yourself. You wanted to keep them. Once Brandon and Athriel realized that, they fought you. And Athriel, Celaena drew Godryn, its hilt glowing blood red. Your beloved Athriel, dearest friend of Brandon, when Athriel fought you, you killed him. You, not the Volg, and in your grief and shame, you were weakened enough that Brandon took the keys from you. It wasn't some enemy force who sacked the sun goddess's temple, it was Brandon. He burned any last trace of himself, any clue of where he was going, so you would not find him. He left only Athriel's sword to honor his friend in the cave where Athriel had first carved out the eye of that poor lake creature and never told you. After Brandon left those shores, you did not dare follow him. Not when he had the keys, not when his magic, my magic, was so strong. That was why you abandoned your land in the foothills and left it to rot. That was why you built a city of stone surrounded by water, So Brandon's heirs could not return and roast you alive. That was why you wanted to see me, why you bargained with my mother. You wanted to know what manner of threat I would pose. What would happen when Brandon's blood mixed with Maeve's line? Celaena opened her arms wide, Godrun burning bright in one hand. Behold my power, Maeve. Behold what I grapple with in the deep dark, what prowls under my skin.
It's so freaking badass. She also, she shows Maeve the, like, vision that Narok shows her, like, before Narok dies. And it's basically, like, Aelin crowned as queen after, like, this fight. And the host and the like, power that she will have in the future. She doesn't show Maeve that it's a possible future, that it's just something that could happen. She shows Maeve and is able to keep back the pieces that would make Maeve understand that this isn't an actual, like, foretold fortune and what will come to pass. So she's able to trick her into thinking that, like, I'm going to win this and you're going to back the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
She has one other trick up her sleeve because she's basically trying to use all of this to, like, get Rowan to, like, not be hurt anymore by her and to, like, protect him. She has the ring. It was the golden ring that had been left in Goldrin's scabbard. She had kept it safe all these weeks, asking Emrys to tell story after story about Maeve as she pieced together the truth about her aunt for just this very moment, for this very task. This ring that she has is the ring of Athril, and it's, like, her lover's ring. And it holds great sentimental value to her, and Maeve absolutely wants it. And she trades this ring. She offers it to Maeve in return for Rowan being released from his blood oath. And Maeve is like, the blood oath is eternal, like, you can't do that. And she just puts the ring in her palm. She's like, free him or I will melt it down and I will destroy it. And Maeve agrees.
And frees Rowan.
And frees Rowan. My blood that flows in you, Maeve said, through no dishonor, through no act of treachery, I hereby free you, Rowan Whitethorn, of your blood oath to me. Rowan just stared and stared at her, and Celaena hardly heard the rest of the words. Hardly heard the rest, the words Maeve spoke in the old language. But Rowan took out a dagger, spilled his own blood on the stones, whatever that meant. She had never heard of a blood oath being broken before, but had risked it regardless. Perhaps not in all the history of the world had one ever been broken honorably. His friends were wide-eyed and silent. Maeve said, "You're free of me, Prince Rowan Whitethorn." That was all Celaena needed to hear before she tossed the ring to Maeve, before Rowan rushed to her, his hands on her cheeks, his brow against her own. Aelin, he murmured. And it wasn't a reprimand or a thank you, but a prayer. Aelin, he whispered again, grinning, and kissed her brow before he dropped to both knees before her. And when he reached for her wrist, she jerked back. You're free now. Behind them, Maeve watched, brows high, but Celaena could not accept this, could not agree to it. Complete and utter submission, that's what the blood oath was. He would yield everything to her, his life, his property, and any free will. Rowan's face was calm, though, steady, assured. Trust me. And this is, like, the conversation that they basically have, like, silently, not speaking, just, like, with their eyes. I don't want you enslaved to me. I won't be that kind of queen. You have no court. You are defenseless, landless, and without allies. She will let you walk out of here today, but she will come after you tomorrow. She knows how powerful I am, how powerful we are together. I will make her hesitate. It will make her hesitate. Please don't do this. I will give anything else you ask, but not this. Not this. I claim you, Aelin, to whatever end. And he, like, literally immediately does the blood oath to her.
Yep. Together, Fireheart, he said, we'll find a way together. It just brings us back to them promising to get to the other side. Together.
Maeve's all pissy. Now that you've insulted me further, get out, all of you. So they leave Doranel. They, like, find an inn to stay in so that they can sleep and relax and eat. And she asks him to tattoo her back, like the way that his is tattooed. And she tattoos she gets her parents, her uncle, Lady Marion, tattooed, like, on her back, basically, like, for her family and her people and her kingdom. And then she gets Nehemia and Sam's name, like, tattooed, like, on her wrists to, like, honor them as well. And, like, the whole time that she's doing this, she's, like, singing, like, basically funeral dirges, like, wow, this is happening. And, like, finally is getting the chance to, like, mourn for her family and her kingdom the way that she couldn't when she was younger, and is, like, finally accepting that, like, she's not just going to ignore that part of her past and her life and accept it and, like, move forward. She finally has, like, this big healing moment. No longer would they be locked away in her heart. No longer would she be ashamed.
Then we're back with the witches, and it's war game time. So War Games happens, and this is the big, like, uptick,
the moment
for
we've been waiting for.
the witches. Yes. There's one line from Asterin that kind of happens early on, like at the beginning before War Games starts, and she says, "Fools for not knowing what they've unleashed." Asterin murmured, "The words carry to Manon on the wind. Stupid mortal fools." The witches know, like, what they are capable of, especially the 13. Like, they know so much, and I feel like this, in and of itself, like, really solidifies that they think the king wants to control them, but they're not gonna have it. And to me, that is Asterin, like, really saying, oh, he thinks he's gonna be able to bring us and, like, to fight for him forever. That's not gonna fly. So they go through War Games.
The
Black
Games
Beaks are gonna win. Like, let's be honest. It's the 13 leading the Black Beaks. Like, we know that they're the powerful coven, or, like, the most powerful coven. So in the midst of this, they have the whole goal is to capture these eggs, these glass eggs. There are 3 glass eggs.
Capture the flag, but with, like, dragon's eggs, basically.
Yeah. And so they protect their own, the Blackbeaks, and they go for, I believe, they go for the blue blood nest first.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because they're scary, the blue bloods, who are the least intimidating of the witches, they're like, "Yep, you're good. Just take it. Go ahead." Like, "Yep, okay."
They also, like, Petra, who is the leader, the heir to the blue bloods, like, she's pretty realistic. She's a smart girl. She knows that there's probably 2 options of who's going to win. It's either going to be Iskra or it's going to be Manon. And at every opportunity, Petra's like, "Look, anything that's between the 2 of you, I'm here to support Manon getting it, because I just don't want Iskra to have whatever it is. If it's a possibility, I would far rather you have it than
Mm-hmm.
like Iskra have it.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of like, if you need to take our egg, like we don't want any of our wyverns hurt. We don't want to die. Like yeah, go right ahead. They're not making it like super easy for them, but they're
No, they are
definitely
putting
like
up a fight, but they definitely give
they're not
to.
taking any chances. Is the
Mm-hmm.
main thing.
Yeah.
The yellow legs, on the other hand, they've all been given specific orders, like not to kill each other and like not
Yes.
to hurt the wyverns because like they still have to go and fight after this.
Yeah.
Iskra is a piece of shit, so she doesn't fucking care. She doesn't
Mm-hmm.
do any of that. She doesn't follow any of the rules. And she and like Petra are fighting. Like their wyverns are fighting. And Keely, who's Petra's wyvern, is like really like getting caught like in a bad situation. And
Yeah, pretty much
Manon,
Iskra gave the command to kill to
yeah,
her wyvern.
Manon and Abraxos are like watching this happen, and like Abraxos is like hesitant to leave. Like Abraxos wanted to go and like help her basically, and is like not really taking Manon's commands when she's trying to get him to go and like get the egg, because he's kind of focused on this fight that's happening between Keely and like Iskra's wyvern.
Mm-hmm.
And they hear Iskra give her wyvern the command to kill Keely, and it like clomps down on Keely's neck, and
Mm-hmm.
then they just start like falling. And
That's kind of when Manon and Abraxos like, phew.
Manon and Abraxos like kind of make the decision to go and try to save Petra because they think that they have a chance to at least save her. And Keely is like basically communicating that that's what she needs. Like Keely is trying her absolute best to stay airborne so that Petra does not die, even though
Mm-hmm.
Keely knows that she's not going to like survive.
Yeah.
And Abraxos and Manon like shoot out to her. They are like the fastest. Like he's very small and agile. And Keely spends all of the last like bits of her life just trying to get like rotated around so that Manon can get onto Keely and unhook Petra, because Petra has like been knocked unconscious. And she like gets Petra off of Keely, and Keely just kind of like plummets to the earth, but like there's like a moment where like Keely like she has relief of some sort that like Petra is safe. I'm literally tearing up talking about this because it breaks my heart. Ugh. And Keely, like Abraxos like would not be able to stop Keely's like fall, and she falls to the ground and she dies.
I think one bit that proves that Manon's frozen stone heart is cracking a bit more when it comes to the wyverns is when Manon frees Petra. She is standing on the back of Keely, and she's about to get swooped up by Abraxos. And right before he gets to her, she says, "Thank you. Thank you," she said to Keely as she flung herself and Petra into the air. They fell for a heartbeat, twisting and dropping too fast, but then Abraxas was there, his claws outstretched. He swept them up, banking along the side of the canyon and over the lip. Keely hit the floor of the canyon with a crash that could be heard across the mountains. She did not rise again. That moment of her thanking Keely for protecting one of her own, like she,
even though it's a blue blood,
yeah,
and especially that it's a blue blood,
it kind of solidifies this like thought in my brain of like the king is gonna come back and want these witches to like fight for him, and the blue bloods and the blackbeaks are gonna be like, nah, fuck that shit, and the yellow legs are gonna be like, yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. We want power. Sounds great. We'll be a part of that. Thanks. And it just, It's terrible.
The Blackbeaks, they do win the war games. They win anyways, and Manon is crowned wing leader.
Mm-hmm.
Her grandmother, like, chews her out for not letting Petra die. Specifically for, like, not letting Petra die. And Manon just, like, doesn't apologizes, doesn't care. And she, like, tests her granddaughter, like, one more time and brings out this. They found, like, a Kraken witch. And Manon's grandmother is like, I got you a gift now that you're crowned wing leader. And she puts this, like, Kraken witch in front of her and is like, I got you a new cloak. Because the cloak that Manon wears is like a cloak from one of the Kraken witches that she's killed. Mm-hmm. Manon knew that, like, she could not refuse. She couldn't say no. She, like, had to kill this witch, basically. But, like, before the witch dies, Manon lets her talk. And
for, like, an extended period of time.
For, like, a very long time. And, like, people are shouting at her to, like, kill her. And Manon just kind of, like, stands there, like, sword at the ready, like, ready to go, ready to kill her, and just lets her talk and talk and talk. And this witch basically tells her that, like, her clan feels sorry for all of them. Because they have all been turned into killers by their, like, matrons. And they're like, we feel sorry for you. That you guys are trained to be these, like, heartless killers. And, like, have no idea what life or, like, real life or what love or happiness or joy feel like. And it's, like, so hardcore and, like, jarring almost for, like, Manon to hear. And is, like, such a great confirmation of, like, you're bred to be these, like, heartless things. That's not normal. And there's learning, like, so much about, like, love and protection and all of that of their wyverns. It's like, oh, it's all starting to creep in. It's the character development. It is a coming.
Yeah, this idea of made really sticks with Manon, too. They made you into monsters. Made, Manon. And we feel sorry for you.
Oh, it's so good. She does end up having to kill the witch and take her cloak. But she has this moment at the end where, like, she's thinking about it back. She's never known regret, not true regret. But she regretted not knowing the Kraken's name. She regretted not knowing who the new cloak on her shoulders had belonged to, where'd she come from, and how she'd lived. Somehow, even though her long life had been gone for 10 years, somehow that regret made her feel incredibly heavily mortal.
Dun, dun, dun.
Character development.
She has a heart. She has a heart.
Manon. Please just don't do anything bad for the king. Thanks. Next book, please, no bad things for king. Thank you.
Okay. She's doing it. We're having bad scenes back to back and back to back because it's the last part of the book. So
at least we got Abraxas. They win. So there's that. That's the only joy. Back to bed. Here we go.
Yep. So Adion, Kale, Scorsha, Sorsha, and Dorian are all called to the king's glass
Chambers.
Bullshit room.
Glass bullshit room.
Yes. His stupid glass chair and his stupid glass building.
That's it. We're calling it. It's glass bullshit room. That's fuck throne room. We don't need that word anymore. Glass bullshit room. Someone write it down.
He doesn't deserve a throne. It's glass bullshit.
Put it on a t-shirt. Glass bullshit room. Sorry, I can't. Keep going. You got it.
He now is trying to, I don't know, do 911 recognizance on internally to try to like figure out
Yeah, because they're all
of his
freaking
shit
out.
is
They're like,
hitting the
"What?
fan.
What happened? Why is
Yep.
this?"
The king is like, shit's hitting the fan. There's too many things thinging right now. So
Too many
Aelin's back.
coincidences.
Aelin's back and he's pissed. He knows that Aelin is going to come for Aedion if she knows that he's alive. Kale is just, in his eyes, just this pawn and doesn't really matter.
Yep.
Sorsha, we find out, has been feeding information to the rebels, and he knew this the whole time. And Dorian, he doesn't fully know, but he suspects, has magic. So he brings them all into this room and threatens Sorsha's life. In doing that, he is also saying, like, okay, there's a traitor among us, in this room. Who's the traitor?
Yeah. He brings all 4 of them in there and is like, which one of you is the traitor? Like, one of the 4 of you is the traitor. And Kael is like ready to fall on the sword, pretty much. And before he does it, Aedion like jumps in and is like, surprise, it's me.
No shit, it's me. You thought that black ring was gonna hold me? Here's that the janky one I made that replicated it. He was like, I wonder. And then the king, of course, goes, I wondered why I couldn't really control you that much, but makes sense now. Got it. Okay, cool. Check. Figured that one out. He then, of course, like knew Aedion was gonna do a last stand because he wanted Aedion in like the dungeons pretty much prior to Aelin showing up because he wanted to use him as a tool against her.
He wants to lure her there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then he's like, okay, enough with that. Now my real traitor, Sorsha, would you like to say something about yourself? It? And Dorian's like, leave her out of this. Like, she has nothing to do with this. Stop this madness. And he was like, oh, she has nothing to do with this? What about the letter that I found to her friends about stuff in her trash can that Amethy was so kind to bring to me?
The head healer.
Yeah.
Sorsha's boss.
So Sorsha then admits to, yes, she pretty much says that you, like, cursed my whole entire kingdom.
Yeah. I mean, are we really surprised? You killed, like, her entire family, and she had been working with the rebels.
Yep.
And, like, sending information back to them.
You destroyed everything that I had, and you deserved everything that's to come, she said. Then she looked at Dorian, whose eyes were indeed wide, his face bone white. I was not supposed to love you, but I did. I do. And there's so much I wish. I wish we could have done together, seen together. And of course, Dorian, like, tries to fight for her to live. And the king is just like, no, I'm good. And it was within a second of him saying no that the guard beheaded her. And that was another thing that broke Kale kind of back to back. So we now have, this will be his third, or I guess fourth if you count him trying to take the fall, try of...
If you count him trying to take the fall.
Well, he tried.
If you count the 2 lines of text where he's like, I'll do it, and then someone else does it instead.
Yeah, if you count that, this would be 4.
I will give him a 0.5 for thinking the thought, okay?
Yeah.
He does not get a full point.
Of course, Dorian screams because the woman that he loves is
heartbreaking.
That one that describes it? Or?
Yeah. The scream that erupted out of Dorian. I don't know. Well, so here we go. I'll just do this part first. Dude, trigger warning, okay? The blood and gore, that's, like, this is it. So if you can't do it, skip forward, like, 30 seconds or something. Okay? No. Chaol thought he had not heard it, the word that cleaved through the air just before the guard's sword did. One blow from that mighty sword, that was all it took to sever Sorsha's head. The scream that erupted out of Dorian was the worst sound that Chaol had ever heard. Worse, even, than the wet, heavy thud of her head hitting the red marble. Aedion began roaring and cursing at the king, thrashing around his chains, but the guards hauled him away, and Chaol was too stunned to do anything other than watch the rest of Sorsha's body topple to the ground. And then Dorian, still screaming, was scrambling through the blood toward her head, as if he could put it back, as if he could piece her together. Oh, God. Oh, my God. That one.
Then Gale, actually attempts to make a stand to protect his friend and pulls out his sword, and the king is like, put that away. Get out of here.
I have no interest in your noble antics. You are to go home to your father tomorrow. Don't leave this castle in disgrace. It's
Chaol
just
went on.
Everything that Chaol does, ugh. It's a moment too late. I feel bad, but it is.
Well, he tried. Chaol went on.
I know, that's what it is. It's
there is a queen in the north, and she has already beaten you once. She will beat you again and again, because what she represents and what your son represents is what you fear most, hope. You cannot steal it, no matter how many you rip from their homes and enslave. You cannot break it, no matter how many you murder. The king shrugged. Perhaps, but maybe I could start with you. He flicked his finger to the guards. Kill him too. And this, of course, breaks Dorian. And Dorian freezes the arrow that was going towards Chaol.
So cool.
In the air. And then he immediately just unleashes his ice fury at his dad and blows him back. It describes that he is thrown back. The king was getting to his feet, but another wave of Dorian's magic slammed into him, knocking him down. There were tears staining Dorian's bloody cheeks now. When you come back, the prince said, burn this place to the ground. Now go. And pretty much, he's like, I saved your life for a fucking reason. Now leave, and you need to go get her. And she needs to fix this. We need to fix this, and you need to go and do it. So he leaves.
He does it just so that he can buy Chaol time. I mean, he's also kind of pissed at his dad for,
yeah.
But I think it is mostly to buy time so that he can
leave.
Let Chaol escape, and then Chaol can go and get help. Because Aedion's captured at this point, too. Being dragged into the dungeons.
And Aedion can hear everything that's going on. He knows, even if he never got to see her, it was still better than having to face her when he explained that the captain was dead. Because he thinks Chaol is dead at this point. Because he hears all of this chaos. And he's like, Chaol's got nothing. He's got a dinky sword. And Dorian has magic. So of the two people to maybe potentially survive, Chaol is probably not it. In this, Dorian's dad kind of gets him to the ground, and the last scene with Dorian and the King of Otterlin is the king puts a collar of onyx origin onto his neck, and then everything goes dark for Dorian. So now we have a, scene of Dorian now is being controlled in some manner. So he is potentially going to turn into similar to Narok or
Narok, yeah.
The one they found in the library. It does note that Chaol ran, and he did go and get one thing. Because his main saving grace is that he will always save Fleetfoot, apparently. And he went and grabbed Fleetfoot.
Good.
At least he has a priority.
It's the one correct priority he has. Get the animal, please. Protect the animal, okay? He has one. That's it. That's all he's got. He's got that one.
Before I read this passage of Chaol running, I went, Fleetfoot?
Beforehand? Okay.
Yeah, before I hit this, and then I was like, oh, thank
Don't
God.
worry.
Okay. He
Don't
goes
worry.
against Fleetfoot. Perfect. They go back to
Sarah's
the hidden
got
apartment.
you. She has you. It's fine.
Fantastic. Great.
Dear God.
So now Kale is on the run. He's out. We, of course, flip back to the witches, and Manon has won. She is the wing leader. And of course, now that she's the wing leader and the war games are over, the king has summoned them. And they are to go to Morath, the place where the Duke is, and possibly Caltaine and Roland. We don't know about those two. Don't know if they're still alive. We just know they went. 2 prisoners went with Parrington to Morath. And so they are summoned to go there as well. And it's like legit tomorrow. Like you're going.
They're
tomorrow.
immediately leaving.
Yeah.
And they're going.
So Kale's on the run. The witches are to go to Morath. This is where we're.
A lot of wrap up right at the end here.
Manon did not let herself savor that beautiful breeze or open herself to that joy. She had work to do. They all did. Despite what the Kraken had said, Manon had not been born with a heart or a soul. She did not need them. Once they fought the king's war, when his enemies were bleeding out around them, only then would they ride to reclaim their broken kingdom, and she would go home at last.
Sure, Manon.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah, no soul, no heart. Not gonna have any moral quandaries coming up at all.
Nope. Definitely not.
0 suspicion whatsoever.
Kale throws his sword into the water. Like
that's it. That's like his wrap up. It's literally
his
just says
sword that has an eagle pommel into the water. Maybe it's because it was the sword the king gave him.
It was the fact that it was the sword that he used for the king's guard. But like,
that's his like.
Bro, it's a sword. Out. Like, just keep the sword at least.
Well,
just keep the sword.
He's a man of morals. Remember?
Did he have a? Yeah, morals replacing thought and common sense. That tracks for Kale. So we'll continue on.
Okay. You do this one.
This is the last chapter. And the last chapter of this book makes me laugh because
I have so many just like little highlights on this
of
like,
this
2
this
pages.
Whole thing.
Yeah. It's just this conversation.
And this is why. This plan is absurd, Rowan said for the 100th time, stopping in the shadows of a tavern by the docks. The sea air was light and crisp. Going back alone seems like suicide. 1, I'm going back as Celaena, not Aelin. Celaena, who did not accomplish the king's mission and who they are now going to hunt down. Good points, Rowan. Good points. Yeah, her plan is to go back. Just go back. I'll just go back as Celaena, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Don't worry.
And
the
I'm
king
like,
does not suspect a thing.
She's smarter than that, you know? Like, come on. She makes like some good points of like, you know, it'll be easy for me to get in because I'm supposed to be there. I'll go and I'll just like, you know, make up some excuse as to why I didn't kill the people over there and why I haven't been involved in any of the stuff that's happened over there that you sent all your soldiers for. Just avoided all of that casually.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, cool, let me go with you. She's like, you look Fae, bro. You can't come with me. People will notice that you're Fae. And he's like, well, I'll just change.
Fae or you're a hawk.
I'll just change into my other form. And she's like, okay, but you can't change back. So then you'd just be a fucking bird. And like, that's not gonna work either. Like, you cannot come with me.
Kind of useless to me as a bird.
So he's just like, so I just have to stay here? Like, this is a terrible idea. Like, I don't like this at all.
It's like, tough shit.
And at the end of the day, she's like, look, I could just, like, tell you can't come and you have no choice. You must obey me. But she's basically like, I'm getting the rest of my court, and then I will come back. And, like, in the meantime, Rowan is like, okay, well, I guess I'll go, like, repair Mistward or something, because there's nothing else I can go do.
I do like, they have a little heart-to-heart, of course, before she leaves. She nodded. You never told me, she said, what you were praying to Mala for that morning before we entered Dornell. For a moment, it looked like he wouldn't tell her, but then he quietly said, I prayed for 2 things. I asked her to ensure you survived the encounter with Maeve, to guide you and give you the strength you needed. That strange, comforting warmth, that presence that had reassured her. The setting sun kissed her cheeks as if in confirmation, and a shiver went down her spine. And the second, it was a selfish wish and a fool's hope. She read the rest of it in his eyes, but it came true. Dangerous for a prince of ice and wind to pray to the Firebringer, she managed to say. Rowan shrugged, a secret smile on his face, as he wiped away the tear that escaped down her cheek. For some reason, Mala likes me and agreed that you and I make a formidable pair.
Aww.
She boarded the boat as night fell, hurried into the galley with the other passengers to keep them from learning the route through the reef. With little fuss, they set sail, and when they were at last allowed out of the galley, she emerged onto the deck to find dark, open ocean around them. A white-tailed hawk flew overhead, and it swooped low to brush its star-silvered wing against her cheek in a farewell before it turned back with a sharp cry. She lifted her face to the stars. She was Aelin Ashriver Galathinius, heir of 2 mighty bloodlines, protector of a once glorious people, and queen of Terrasen. She was Aelin Ashriver Galathinius, and she would not be afraid.
Yay! This book
It's
was
so
good.
So good.
Absolutely 5 stars. I know there's so many tabs. I think you have more tabs than me. Dear
Yes.
God, woman, look at you go. Yikes. You tabbed a lot more like actual language and stuff in there than I did, because I feel like
I'm
a
here
lot
for
of
the
it.
lore.
I tabbed some more.
all of the like. This is a collar. This is a collar. This is a collar. This is a collar.
Oh,
this
God,
smell.
you
This
did
smell.
all
This
of
smell.
that?
Yeah,
Oh
I did
my
all
God.
the things.
That's too many things. I think I didn't take out any tabs, but I do like that the stuff that I did end up tabbing in this after like going through my second reread. I didn't tab anything that was like a misdirection or incorrect or didn't have something that like it didn't come up later. But I missed all of the pink and green was stuff that I didn't have the first time around for some reason. I just missed it, or like maybe I didn't think about it the first time around and now I'm like, ooh, shit. Wait, that's a thing.
I plan on missing nothing.
Yeah, well, if you tab everything, then you're gonna hit,
It's not everything. There's blank. Look, there's like a whole gap right here.
That's not an amount of pages. That just happens with the disbursement of where the lore is in the thing, okay? Leave that.
I also at
Get
some
outta
point
here.
started running out of the tabs. I ran out of all the orange
Oh, I
tabs.
forgot I was gonna
And
bring
so
you
I
more,
got
and
to
then I
here.
forgot.
And then now I tab an orange spot and then highlight yellow within the pages.
Oh,
so then it was like a tab and then I flip yellow, 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 yellow.
Oh, okay, I see.
So
Do you
towards
need more?
the end, I'm out of orange ones.
You need
And
more
I'm
orange
very
ones, though, right?
close down of yellow.
Shit. Well, wait, what are you using for Assassin's Blade? Because are you taking that with you?
I can do a different color. I'm gonna do Kindle.
Okay, you're gonna do the Kindle version yeah.
And then I tab it as my review. I
So
highlight
everyone-
in Kindle and then I
Everyone
tab
that's
in my review.
listening, we tab all of our books. I hope people are like that sound. That's all of the tabs that we have. The next book that we are reading is Assassin's Blade. So we are doing, just as a reminder, we're doing the romantic reading of this, or the romantic order that you can find online. It has the Assassin's Blade being read right after Heir of Fire, before Queen of Shadows. So that is what Kat is going to start next.
Yes.
Yeah, we really appreciate you guys watching the episode and being here with us.
Thank you for hanging out and watching part 2 of Heir of Fire, or listening to. You can find us at the Smut Peddlers on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and anywhere you kind of get your podcasts. Goodbye!
Bye!